on the western coast of Avestan, between the nation of Varissia and Cheliax, or more accurately now, the more recently established nation of Ravenel, lies a unique land chained in shadow. This is Nidal. The history of this land begins with the Earthfall Cataclysm. Prior to this time, the ancient Nidalese were a tribal people, nomadic horse lords who were likely a related people to the Khelids of central Avestan. They were a people with tan skin and dark hair who kept on the move, in keeping with seasonal changes and the movements of the herds they hunted. They laid their dead to rest beneath imposing stone cairns and received spiritual guidance from their elder shamans. Their leaders were mighty warrior chieftains whose strength came from physical might and battle prowess. Though some of the horse lord tribes paid homage to Gosrae, whose presence the Nidalese perceived in both the grassy plains and lush forests of their land, others held veneration for Desna, the goddess of dreams and travelers, and still others worshipped stranger ancient deities not well recognized today. In ancient times, the Nidalese established few permanent settlements, instead favoring well-supplied but intermittently populated outposts. Their culture was vibrant and flourishing, with their horse-breeding techniques ranked among the most advanced in the world. From the few surviving documents that date back to this time, we know that Aslanti sailors would come to these coasts to purchase their horses, because though the Nidalese tribes were considered primitive, their horses were the marvel and envy of the ancient world. The ancient Nidalese were said to cherish their steeds as beloved family members. Then came the year -5293. Without warning, the sky blackened as a terrible meteorite began to burn up in the upper atmosphere. Huge chunks of star metal crashed into the Arcadian Ocean. The empire of Aslant, in fact the entire continent they once dwelled on, was destroyed. Nidal itself was not directly impacted by the starstone, but tidal waves from the ocean caused terrible flooding all across the land. Then, as days passed and the skies didn't clear, ash and dust began to fall from the sky, choking all the life in the land. The Nidalese realized, as all other human life did in that time, that they would need to flee to survive. Some made their way into the Mindspin Mountains, looking for shelter in the caves there. Most did not. Here, their entire way of life was in jeopardy. While people could seek refuge underground and subsist on roots and grubs to survive, the unfortunate reality was that their horses could not adapt in the same way. So it was that in the chaotic aftermath of the Earthfall, the greatest elders of the ancient horse lords of Nidal beseeched their gods for salvation. While their ancestral deities remained silent, another power responded to their cries. Zon Kuthon, the Midnight Lord, ruler of shadows and harbinger of pain. More details can be found on Zon Kuthon himself in my Evil Gods video series linked below. He presented the elders with a dreadful proposition: deliverance from the calamity in exchange for eternal servitude. Near the city of Ridwan, Zon Kuthon presented himself to the three elders, emerging for the first time in untold millennia from his place of exile in the Shadow Plane. He told the elders there that the Nidalese would be given refuge from Earthfall's devastation, but the price would be absolute and unwavering obedience, not only for themselves, but for all their future generations. Filled with fear and desperation, the ancient Nidalese consented. They bound themselves in unwavering loyalty to Zon Kuthon, and this ancient covenant with the Midnight Lord has remained unbroken for the last 10,000 years. Those elders that struck this bargain became immortal, no longer fully human, but neither have they become true undead. Caught between mortal life and undeath, the Black Triune, as they are called, have become as dreaded and unchanging as the land itself. The original elders that struck this bargain with Zon Kuthon were as follows. The first was a great warrior and horse lord once, a cavalier who became a Kuthite sentinel, and was likely a former warrior chieftain of one of the larger Nidalese clans before the bargain was struck. The second was a ranger once, who became an exalted of Zon Kuthon, and was likely a tribal champion or scout once. The last was a witch, who became a Kuthite evangelist. She was likely one of the eldest of the original tribal shamans. Some of this is speculation, however. Very few scholars have been able to learn much about the Black Triune's past, and most of those who have done so eventually met horrible fates at the hands of the Triune's agents. The exact details of the former lives of the Black Triune are therefore unknown. All three have carefully erased all records of their lives. No one knows their true names, and they rarely appear in public, and they usually obscure their identities with shadow magic in private audiences. Originally, the Black Triune had entered into their pact with Zon-Kuthon with the sole intention of safeguarding their own people. Yet as word of the Midnight Lord's protection spread, others came to join them. Survivors from the once great empires of Aslant and Thassalon, alongside refugees from various other realms, sought safety from the aftermath of the catastrophe. In a remarkably short span of time, Nidal underwent a dramatic transformation, transitioning from a society of independent nomad clans to becoming the last bastion of civilization in Avestan. Although Zon-Kuthon had promised deliverance from the Earthfall, he did not clear the sky for the Nidalese. Instead, he provided the same gloomy illumination that is always present in the Plane of Shadows. See my Inner Sphere Part 2 guide for more details on the Shadow Plane and how it is illuminated. Thus, although Nidal was uniquely not a land of darkness, neither did it have true light. Instead, it would remain a shadowed land forever. Naturally, Kuthite worship emerged as the central pillar of Nidalese culture. By minus 5275, guided by the Black Triune, an elite group of Kuthite aristocrats known as the Umbral Court rose to power. In the subsequent millennia, the nation retreated from the troubles of the outside world, becoming increasingly consumed by their own enigmatic and arcane pursuits. As their focuses turned inward, the Nidalese soon lost interest in the affairs of the surrounding realms. In minus 4294, the Age of Darkness came to an end, as the ash field in the sky finally parted and the light of the sun could be seen clearly once again. This occurred all across Golarion except Nidal, where the shadows never fully lifted. In Nidal, the days are not bright. A perpetual gloom seems to hang over the country. But neither does nightfall bring total darkness, just as it was in the Age of Darkness before. By minus 4200, faithful worshippers of Zon-Kuthon had completed construction of a shrine overlooking the Weeping Fields, where the Black Triune had first struck their bargain with the Midnight Lord. This location would eventually develop into the modern city of Ridwan. Around minus 3000, the Nidalese also founded the city of Nisroch along the coast and established Ethel Loren as a transportation hub down the river. It was about minus 1000 that Iragath of Ridwan first developed his system of physical philosophy that taught the storing of pain in one's own body for its release into others. This became the foundational teachings of the Iragath monastery. By this time, because of its close ties with the Plane of Shadow, the Nidalese had long developed large populations of Caligni, Fetchlings, and even Velstrax, but in minus 92, the Umbral Court expanded its welcoming of Shadow Plane residents when it began settling Shadow Giants in the Umberfell as permanent residents of Nidal. In the Year 1, Aradin raised the Starstone from the sea and ascended to divinity. I have moved to this point fairly quickly, but it is interesting to note that by this time, Nidal had had 5,000 years of history behind it, whereas the Taldans were a much younger nation. Civilization had only taken root there 1,200 years prior, when the Emperor Taldaris had united the land. Although Nidal was a sophisticated and surprisingly cosmopolitan land, with humans living alongside Caligni, Fetchlings, Velstrax, and Shadow Giants, and building sizable cities and monuments to their Dark Lord, and in spite of the fact that their devotion was to an unquestionably evil deity, they were not an imperialistic nation. For whatever reason, they were happy to focus inwards on themselves, and not work to spread their gloomy shadows beyond their borders. They did, however, engage actively in trade, though much of the trade was extraplanar in nature, as the nation of Nidal continued to build relations with the natural denizens of the Plane of Shadow. But the Nidalese did not just constrain themselves to making connections with the Plane of Shadow either. The strange entities known as the Callborn, who hailed from the ethereal plane, established a large settlement in Nidal. The Nidalese also made connections with the Plateau of Leng and the greater dimensions of dreams. They brokered agreements through Velstrac intermediaries with the Sakil lords in the secret city of Zebalba. In fact, by the year 64, the Nidalese Caligni seer Firescythe began collecting the recorded experiences of other Nidalese planar travelers venturing into the dark unknown. Her collections, one of the most detailed and painstakingly chronicled accounts of mortals' efforts to chart the dark tapestry, are archived as The Voyages into the Void. And The Voyages remains one of the best and most detailed record of the Dark Tapestry that can be found anywhere in Golarion. In 1520, the Taldan general Corran established the city of Correnton. His scouts mapped the western coastline of Avestan around that time period. What the Taldans thought when they discovered the shadowed land of Nidal is not known, but it is safe to assume that the Taldans would not have known what to make of the shadow-bound land and its dark residents. Certainly the Taldans made no effort to open trade relations with the Nidalese. To the Nidalese, on the other hand, it was the first real sign they had received that the world beyond their borders had changed a lot in the last 6,000 years, and that maybe it was time to prepare to meet it. The Taldans were not content to just hold a few settlements on the coast either. In 1673, Taldan settlers established the city of Vyre, located on Vyre Island in Nisroch Bay, very close to Nidal. 10 years later, in 1683, the fourth great exploration drew to a close, and the Taldans conquered the entirety of the region now known as Cheliax, establishing their northernmost province of Ravenel on the border with Nidal. The provincial capital here was not Vyre, but another, more central settlement named Kintargo. Unfortunately, many of the historical details surrounding the early history of the old Taldan prefecture of Ravenel have been lost to time, as much later, when it was part of Imperial Cheliax, Chelish redactors were engaged to erase certain details of Ravenelian history. Regardless, it would be safe to assume that the early Ravenelian settlers had some relations with the Nidalese. It's likely that they came into conflict over land. The gloom of Nidal isn't fixed in place, so the natural border between Ravenel and Nidal isn't like a river or mountain or other natural landmark, but rather Nidal sort of fades into Ravenel. This means that there are places in Ravenel that seem starkly Nidalese. The Terapsilion, for example, a structure whose name means ziggurat of the night in the Shadow tongue, is an ancient step pyramid eternally cloaked in shadows that predates Taldan settlement in the region. It is technically located in the country of Ravenel, outside the borders of Nidal, but it was likely built by Nidalese shadow giants and is more recently the domain of an Umbral dragon. It's also likely that not all of the interactions between the Taldan settlers of Ravenel and the Umbral court were hostile. As previously stated, the Nidalese, although followers of dark gods and masters of dark magic, were not by their nature imperialistic like the Taldans were. Furthermore, the Taldans were a pragmatic lot, and their patron god Aradan was a god of laws and civility. It is likely that upon realizing that Nidal could not be conquered in the way that the Khelids of central Avestan could be, that they instead chose to establish formal terms, clear boundaries, and other types of peace agreements. This is evidenced in a few different ways. First and foremost is the city of Vyre, which is one of the strangest cities in the region and undoubtedly shows some degree of Kuthite influence. Vyre quickly became a den of debauchery. In the otherwise lawful lands of Taldor, a city renowned for its gambling dens, brothels, and thieves' guilds. If that's not enough of an indicator of Kuthite influence, it is worth noting that Kuthite cults did spring up here in the years following its founding, along with the appearance of a number of fetchling and Velstrac residents. Then, about 220 years after the city's founding, in the year 1893, one of its citizens, a skilled thief by all accounts, but of whom little, including his actual name, is known, was able to infiltrate the Starstone Cathedral in Absalom and lay hands on the Starstone. He passed the test of divinity, and became the ascendant god Norgorber, the god of thieves, spies, and assassins. Norgorber would become the patron deity of Vyre, making the city increasingly culturally distinct from the rest of Taldor, and so it therefore developed a natural kinship with nearby Nidal. In 4081, the western provinces of Taldor split from the empire, forming the new empire of Cheliax. Beyond the new name for the empire, nothing much changed in terms of Nidal's southern neighbor. One small difference, perhaps, was in the overall outlook of its neighbor. By the time of the Taldor-Cheliax split, Aradan spent less and less time on the material universe, becoming more like a typical deity and spreading his influence from his seat of power in the heavens of the outer planes. The Taldans had long considered themselves the chosen people of Aradan, but part of the reason Cheliax split from Taldor was that the Chelish at this time saw themselves as the true inheritors of Aradan's promise of a golden age for a glorified and united empire of mankind. Ravenel, like other parts of Cheliax, became increasingly religious, and Vyre began to stand out as an increasingly unusual bastion of non-Aradanite debauchery in an otherwise dour and stoic nation. Perhaps sensing its southern neighbors' growing certitude in the power of their patron deity and the promise of a united empire, the Nidalese began to fear a possible invasion from the south. Rather than risk open war with the Chelish, the Nidalese made some early attempts at imperialism of their own in the early 4100s, by turning their attention northwards. At this time, the lands of Varissia had few settlements. The Varissians themselves were simple nomadic folks that followed long caravan trails, and rarely settled in one place for long. Their lands were also rife with goblins, ogres, and hill giants, so the Nidalese expansionists wisely decided to avoid these territories altogether, and instead settled on an attempted conquest of the Linorm kingdom of Southmoor. The Nidalese assembled a great fleet and besieged the city of Yol. This invasion is also discussed in my Lands of the Linorm Kings deep dive video. Unfortunately for the Nidalese, they underestimated the Ulfin warriors of Southmoor. Though the initial surprise offensive caught the defenders off guard, the Ulfin regrouped and retaliated, bringing in allied warriors from the surrounding kingdoms. The Nidalese were defeated, and their ships were all put to the flame. This defeat may have been more costly to the Umbral court than just the loss of a single fleet. It had made them look weak in the eyes of their ambitious and increasingly confident southern neighbour. In 4305, the Chelish Emperor Haliad III began the Everwar expansion, which turned the Empire of Cheliax's attention northwards. Despite their failed bid to conquer the Ulfin lands, the Chelish found that the Nidalese were not so easily broken. Nidalese resistance was strong, and were it not for the blind faith of the Chelish Aridanites, and the complete confidence they had in their inevitable victory, and the promise of Aridin's return to the realm of mortals to lead them, it is likely they would not have won the war at all. It took 33 grueling years for the Chelish to break the Nidalese defences. In 4338, however, the Black Triune capitulated. Nidal surrendered to Chelish invaders. This ushered in an almost 300-year period in Nidalese history that is commonly referred to as the Shadow Break. This period of relative cultural openness saw the introduction of new ideas and philosophies to Nidal. For the first time in their long history, Nidalese citizens started to get a real sense of what the world was like outside their borders, and how strange and unique a world they had lived in all this time. Chelish missionaries constructed Aridanite and Pharasman churches. The Black Triune receded into the shadows, leaving governorship of occupied Nidal to the Umbral Council, and many members were added to the council that were Chelish loyalists, Aridanites, or more moderate Kuthites. As Cheliax would go on to conquer the lands of Nirmathus, Malthun, and Korvosa in the north, Nidal suddenly went from an isolated nation with closed borders to a critical part of the Chelish trade network between the distant province of Korvosa and the closer province of Ravenel. Lending further inspiration to the dissension of the masses, on a starless night in 4519, when the moon was shining unusually bright, a night referred to as the Night of the Golden Moon occurred. The gold dragon Asterathian appeared in the sky above Pangolais. This dragon was rumoured to have taken a human guise in this period, and to have lived among the people of the city, providing its poorest citizens with food, shelter, and hope. The Shadow Break period, however, would not last forever. In 4606, as has been recounted in more details in my Cheliax deep dive video, Aridin did not return as planned, and Cheliax was instead plunged into a terrible civil war, as the Aridanite clerics lost power and various factions attempted to seize control of the land. The province of Nidal quickly threw in its support behind House Thrune. Its Kuthite majority found the Asmodean worshippers of House Thrune from the Menador provinces to be more natural allies than the Iomedaeans of West Crown in the south. The Nidalese sent mercenary contingents of fetchlings, shadow callers, and their potent Velstrak allies, as well as the notorious Adamant Company, to support the Diabolus faction. On the home front, non-Thrune diplomats and dignitaries that came to visit Nidal from other provinces in Cheliax were quietly assassinated. In the middle of the chaos of the war, in 4632, the province of Malthun declared itself an independent nation. The Chelish were too busy with their civil war to worry too much about this, and Malthun quietly extracted itself from the conflict. It is possible that the relative ease with which they were able to do this might have inspired the Black Triune for what was to come next. Towards the end of the war, the Triune made even bolder moves on the home front. In 4634, they initiated the Midnight Inquisitions, bringing sharp and bloody reprisals to any dissenters, and bringing the Shadow Break period to a swift and abrupt end. The Midnight Inquisition had non-Kuthite or even moderate Kuthite elements purged from the clergy in the Umbral court. Declared heretics and apostates, these individuals were consigned to decades of suffering in the Cathedral of Exquisite Agony. With a tight stranglehold on power in the country, the Black Triune gave House Thrune an ultimatum. If they wanted Nidal's continued support in the war, they would need to grant Nidal independence after they won. House Thrune agreed, and 6 years later, in 4640, they won the war. Nidal became its own nation again, but it would take some time for the Black Triune and the Umbral court to unwind the damage, as they saw it, that the almost 300-year Shadowbreak period had done to the psyche of their populace. This has been the focus of Nidal over the course of the last 100 years, resecuring control, scouring the memories of freedom and independence from the populace, and getting back to where they were before the conquest. As they have been doing so, there have been a few more changes in Nidal's closest neighbours. Firstly, with Nidalese independence and with Malthun having separated from Cheliac 6 years earlier, the remote province of Korvosa was cut off from the mainland, and it became its own independent city-state. More details on Korvosa can be found in my Varissia deep dive video. Then in 4648, only 8 years after the Chelish Civil War, Malthun had a civil war of its own, and it in turn split into two nations, called Nirmathas and Malthun. Finally, in 4717, two significant events occurred in the region. The first were the Iron Fang conquests, played out in the Iron Fang invasion adventure path. As a result of these events, Oprak, one of Avastan's more recently established nations, achieved its statehood through the arduous struggles of the Iron Fang Legion, an hobgoblin army under the command of General Azursi that ravaged northern Malthun and southern Nirmathas in the early parts of that year. Secondly, the Hell's Rebels adventure path featured the resurgence of an organization called the Silver Ravens in the Chelish region of Ravenel. They learned that House Thrune had scoured the local history and hidden the fact that Ravenel and its people had fought against House Thrune during the Civil War, and in particular they suppressed any mention of the galvanizing group known as the Silver Ravens. But the truth could only stay buried for so long. So a group rallied a coordinated opposition to Chelish rule, and while Cheliax was distracted by the glorious reclamation in the south, the events of which are played out in the Hell's Vengeance adventure path, they were able to successfully break from Cheliax. Now Ravenel is an independent country that spans from the Menador Mountains in the south to the Nidalese border in the north. This all brings us to today. As of the publication of this video, it has been 83 years since Nidalese independence. In those 83 years, the Black Triune and the new Umbral Council have done their hardest to bring Nidal back to the nation it once was before the Chelish conquests. Worship of Zon-Kuthon and Kuthite philosophy has returned to center stage. If it were up to them, the Nidalese authorities would not want their citizens to know that it would be possible to worship other deities, that other countries aren't perpetually shrouded in shadow, and that the sadomasochistic infliction of self-pain doesn't have to be the best way to express faithful devotion. But while the Shadowbreak has been ended for just under 100 years, the Shadowbreak itself lasted for almost 300 years, and it's very difficult to erase the memory of such a long period of time. The Aradonite temples built by Chelish conquerors have mostly been destroyed, but in secret clandestine meeting places, words of praise are given to Desna in his absence, or even to Zon-Kuthon's benevolent sister, Shaylin. The political context around Nidal has also changed a good deal in the Age of Lost Omens. For much of Nidal's history, it was secretly the most advanced, sophisticated culture of its age, but it was also stagnant and inward-looking. During the Age of Enthronement, when the Taldan and later the Chelish empires were the great political power centers of the world, Nidal suddenly found itself small and comparatively weak. But the days of the old empires are long gone. Taldor is a shadow of its former self in a far-flung corner of Avastan, and no longer directly relevant to Nidal at all. Cheliax is also greatly diminished, and its ruling house of Thrune owes much of its victory to the Umbral court. Furthermore, although Zon-Kuthon and Asmodeus don't always see eye to eye, they are much closer to each other in terms of general ethos than the gods of the free nations of Avastan, and so the two countries have made for natural allies. A related and significant change is that as the Empire of Cheliax began its own recession, Nidal is now surrounded by nations that don't diminish it, but that are relatively weaker by comparison. In the north, the city-state of Korvosa, while wealthy and influential, is small and weak relative to the united power of Nidal. In the east, the fledgling state of Oprak and the war-ravaged nations of Nirmathas and Malthun are equally unimpressive. In the south, the new nation of Ravenel has only had independent statehood for about 5 years, and although Vyre agreed to support the independence movement, it's definitely a city and an island apart from the rest of the country, and generally friendly with Nidal as well. Although in its long history, Nidal only made one unfortunate and failed attempt at conquest of nearby lands, if it were to attempt to do this again right now, it would find many options in its surrounding territories. So Nidal stands at a crossroads today. For Nidalese patriots and Kuthite traditionalists, this is a rare moment for Nidal to return to the glory of old, or even exceed it. The great debt owed to it by House Thrune is not forgotten. Indeed, Nidalese shadow-callers walk the streets of Chelish cities, and Nidalese advisors stand high in Chelish courts. Nidal is in their minds poised on the precipice of higher greatness than it has ever achieved in its long history. For Nidalese revolutionaries and malcontents, however, the memory of Shadowbreak is not so easily forgotten. They meet in secret and discuss an end to the Shadow. The revolution in Ravenel, and even the formation of nearby Oprak, serve as inspiration. New nations have cropped up everywhere in the Age of Lost Omens. Aradin has died. Prophecy is denied. Even the great bargain struck with Zon Kuthon 10,000 years ago may not carry the power now that it once did. Revolution could come, even here. Let's take a moment to discuss the unique culture of Nidal. Ever since the Black Triune accepted Zon Kuthon's bargain, the nation has been a Kuthite theocracy. The country, in fact, has no governing documents, no charter and no constitution, beyond the vague writings of the Umbral Leaves, the religion's high holy book. Every Nidalese individual is born into Zon Kuthon's faith, subjected to indoctrination in his worship from childhood. While outsiders may practice approved faiths, with small shrines dedicated to other evil deities like Asmodeus, allowed expressly for that purpose, Nidalese have no choice but to follow Zon Kuthon or face criminal prosecution. In spite of this, most Nidalese are not deeply versed in their faith's particulars. They know the major holidays and prayers, but the deeper mysteries are so horrible that few ordinary citizens have the fortitude to properly learn them. Instead, they get on by the bare minimum commitment to the Midnight Lord to pass the scrutiny of the court. Families in Nidal tend to be small and close-knit. Contraception has been widely practiced since the dark days of the Earthfall, when the population had to be limited to survive on scant resources, and it remains routine. Few families have more than 2 children, but the ones they have are fiercely loved. The Umbral court, understanding the usefulness of family attachments and keeping their citizens docile, encourage such sentiments. In the larger cities, like Pangolais and Ridwan, where the Umbral court's influence holds sway, this indoctrination is nearly absolute. The Umbral court and its agents have a heavy presence in the cities, and hold all official military and academic positions. One cannot attain wealth or influence without the court's favor. Therefore, ambitious urban Nidalese often stage costly, elaborate displays of their Kuthite dedication when trying to curry the approval of a particularly influential member of the aristocracy. While some lesser families do genuinely embrace the faith, many others comply out of sheer fear. The price of heresy is too terrible to contemplate, and constant vigilance permeates every corner of life. However, in the northern territories and border villages outside the Uskwood, folk superstitions and quiet apostasies to the goddess Desna have managed to seep into or persist within the populace's beliefs. Entire hamlets may outwardly display mere lip service to Zon Kuthon, only putting on a show of piety during religious holidays, yet away from the watchful gaze of local clerics, many are content to avoid the more extreme obeisance demanded by their faith. In the villages of rural Nidal, showy displays of self-mortification are seldom seen. People lack the resources necessary to perform and survive them. Even in the cities, in fact, most common citizens harbor no fondness for pain, but nevertheless they have no choice but to endure it, as they are constantly reminded that they all belong to the Midnight Lord, obliged to participate in the great ceremonies as an unyielding reminder of their servitude. In addition to the prevalence of the Kuthite faith, another significant factor in the unique Nidalese culture is the significant connection between the land and the plane of shadow. The pervasive influence of Zon Kuthon in Nidal has led to the emergence of numerous rifts across the land, creating conduits through which the shadow plane seeps into the land of Nidal. Among these portals to the shadow plane, several are well known and recognized. These include the gate in the Cathedral of Exquisite Agony in Pangolais, where various denizens of the shadow plane are entreated to cross into the material plane; the gate of Ridwan leading into the deeper darkness, a particularly vile chasm in the plane of shadow; the Shadow Storm, a massive drifting portal that moves erratically through the Umbral Basin, opening and closing at random; the Black Sulphur Pool, situated south of Nisroch; Edamara's Folly, situated amidst the ruins of a centuries-old wizard's lair; and the unstable flickering rift concealed behind the crystal in the moonless mirror. While there may be other permanent portals yet to be discovered, temporary gates to the shadow plane can unpredictably emerge pretty much anywhere in Nidal. Regardless of their permanence, portals generally manifest as undulating panes of darkness, with blurred edges, akin to droplets of ink dispersed in water. From the perspective of the shadow plane, these portals appear as windows of hazy brightness, obscuring the view of what lies on the other side of the realm. Because of the long exposure to the energies of the Shadow Realm, the local human populace of Nidal is all touched by the shadow. Their skin is pale, their eyes are yellow and hooded, and their hair is black or grey, with most other colours muted out. Nidalese fashion reflects the culture's tension between stoic silence and the embrace of pain. Clothes are grey or black, austerely cut, and may be elaborately structured but never gaudily ornamented. In the capital, Pangolais, local fashion runs towards floating layered silk and lace. In Nisroch and Ridwan, glossy or welted leather carries the requisite martial note. Piercings, tattoos, brands, and other ornamental scarification is common. Moonstones, onyxes, and smoky quartzes are fashionable in jewelry, but brightly colored gems are considered in poor taste. Strange as the humans here may seem to outsiders, however, they are certainly not the most unusual people of Nidal. Other ancestries live alongside them here, and over the centuries they have developed their own distinct subcultures. These include the Caligni. In the Age of Darkness, the inhabitants of Calignos, once a territory of the Empire of Aslant, sought refuge in the subterranean Darklands to escape the impending catastrophe of Earthfall. Cut off from the surface world, they eventually succumbed to the influence of the corrupting power sealed deep in Galarian's core in the Age of Creation, and this gradually transformed them into the Dark Folk, the Caligni of today. The Caligni could easily be mistaken for Nidalese or even fetchlings to the unobservant. These grey-skinned individuals have always referred to themselves as Caligni, to remind themselves of their long-lost homeland, that none alive today have ever witnessed. Despite this, the Caligni speak of their homeland with great reverence. For all of Nidal's reputation for evil, Nidal has ever welcomed the lost and disenfranchised from the dark places of the world. It has served as a sanctuary for Caligni, whether they were born within the shadowed nation, adopted, or immigrated. The dark and shadowy environment of Zon-Kuthon's land suits the light-sensitive Caligni, and the Nidalese culture's reverence for creatures tied to darkness makes it a welcoming place for them to integrate into society. The cultural influence of Nidal is potent, however, and finding a Caligni who has emigrated here and yet wholly rejects Zon-Kuthon's malevolent religion is a rarity. The Caligni are welcomed, but only if they comply. The greatest concentration of Caligni in Nidal is New Calignos, the southwestern district of the Nidalese capital Pangolais, which is extensively inhabited by the Darkfolk, who have put in considerable effort to replicate Calignos from what Caligni scholars know of old Aslanti cities. The shadow caverns in Nidal, which connect to Narvoth, the uppermost layer of the Darklands, are also home to substantive numbers of these Aslanti descendants. Although the Caligni are the most common human-descended Darklanders present in the nation of Nidal, given its close ties to the Darklands, Fleshwarps and Mongrel folk, as well as Dark Elves, can also be found in Nidal. Fetchlings. As the Nidalese elders struck their bargain with Zon-Kuthon, they were not the only ones to look to the shadow for safety. During the Age of Darkness, some humans escaped Galarian altogether by entering into the shadow plane itself. Fetchlings is the common name given to the offsprings of humans who were stranded in the shadow plane in those ages long past. Their appearance tends to be slender and delicate, with skin and hair in varying shades of grey, complemented by luminous yellow eyes. Although many fetchlings have chosen to call Nidal their home, they do not integrate into society as seamlessly as the Caligni do. Myths and misconceptions surround them, stemming from their origins as the same place that the dreaded Velstrax come from. As a result, many Nidalese erroneously believe that fetchlings are similarly dangerous horrors, and sometimes fear them as they might fear other denizens of the shadow plane. This misunderstanding has persisted, leading to fear and avoidance of fetchlings, especially by many provincial Nidalese. Due to such misconceptions, fetchlings in Nidal choose to reside in cities where they are more readily understood, and where they can more easily blend into the bustling crowds and escape provincial ignorance. Despite the fact that there is a substantive population of them in Nidal, because the Nidalese readily welcome all who have been touched by the shadow, they in fact seldom embrace the Kuthite faith, typically maintaining a more secular lifestyle insofar as they can get away with that. Shadow Giants. The Shadow Giants are a race of nomadic giants native to Mitheriac, a vast swath of territory in the Shadow Plane. Like most giants, they are believed to have descended from the Gigas, the children of the Titans, in their case, a shadow Gigas who once walked the Plane of Shadows. For more details on the ecology and history of giants, see my Giants creature feature. Shadow giants stand around 15 feet tall and weigh around 2,400 pounds, and they often wear elaborate golden breastplates, headdresses, and bracers. Though their kind originated on the Plane of Shadow, many shadow giants relocated to the wilder regions of Nidal at the invitation of the Umbral court. In Nidal, shadow giants serve as a company of elite shock troops, used in operations requiring overwhelming force. Most shadow giants are taciturn and keep to themselves when not called to duty by the Umbral court. They keep their own counsel and practice their own mysterious religions, worshipping unknown gods not covered in my Pathfinder religion guide to the giant pantheon. These gods require bloody rituals of sacrifice and acts of cannibalism, which are presided over by shamans atop short-stepped pyramids constructed of dark basalt blocks. Other shadow giants in Nidal, however, have forsaken their original gods and now worship Zon-Kuthon. These shadow giants have become assimilated into Nidalese culture to such a degree that their cousins who remained on the shadow plane would not easily recognize them. Vampires. Although the undead are not as abundant in Nidal as they are in nations like Geb or even Ustalav, of all undead creatures, vampires are fairly common in Nidal. This is for a few reasons. First, as part of the Kuthite faith, worshippers must submit themselves to acts of harm, and allowing a vampire to feed on you is considered such an act. In effect, Nidal has institutionalized behavior that makes life easier and more acceptable to vampires. Secondly, all members of the Umbral court, the country's ruling council, must undergo an occult ritual in which they are subjected to specialized tortures. While the subject endures this torture, they must recite the parable of Nidal's pact with Zon-Kuthon, while the ritual's other attendants chant an epic poem that details the Midnight Lord's travels beyond reality. Upon successful completion of this ritual, the target's eyes fill with inky black shadow, and typically they transcend their humanity. Some become shadow lords, umbral creatures, and still others pair the ritual with other processes to become vampires. Many of the notable members of the court are vampires, including the leader of Nidal's infamous Adamant Company, as well as many of Nidal's foreign diplomats and ambassadors sent to nearby Cheliax. In the last 10 years, especially since Erasni's departure and the return to power of the Ghost King, Nidal has increased formal diplomatic relations with the nation of Geb, and most of Nidal's diplomatic envoys to Geb are also naturally vampires. The subject of these diplomatic meetings between Geb and Nidal remain mostly secret, but the prevailing assumption is that the secret Nidalese shadowcraft is being shared with the Gebites so the Gebite vampires can protect themselves from the sun as the Nidalese do. What Nidal is demanding in exchange for such secrets is unknown. Not surprisingly, with all the vampires found in Nidal, the vampire half-bloods known as the Dhampir are also fairly common here too. Velstrax. Velstrax, or chitons in the common parlance, are easily recognizable for their strange and horrifying nature, and their inclination to visibly showcase their many varied ways of inflicting self-harm. The common Nidalese folk harbor nothing but abject fear when encountering these enigmatic beings. On the other hand, members of the Umbral court and their agents have long made use of these beings as advisors, bodyguards, and elite warriors. The Velstrax themselves were fiends of hell once, before they left for the Shadow Plane. They remain powerful entities and have changed much since their transition to the realm of shadows. They have their own unique demigods and culture. And stay tuned, because next week I'll be releasing a new religion video on these strange entities. Because of a Velstrax's close connection to Zon-Kuthon and the Shadow Plane, they mean very different things to different Nidalese. For the devout in Nidal, the presence of a Velstrax is perceived as a glorious sign of Zon-Kuthon's approval, presenting an opportunity to ingratiate themselves or prove their worth at this divine visitation. To rebels seeking to oppose the oppressive regime, however, the sight of a Velstrax is a sure and dreaded indication that their clandestine schemes have been discovered, leaving them with the desperate choice to confront the threat head-on or to flee in fear. Factions in Nidal. The Umbral Court. Situated beneath the Black Triune in Nidal's hierarchy lies the Umbral Court, the esteemed aristocracy of the nation blessed by shadows. Comprising dozens of members, the Umbral Court in turn commands hundreds of agents of various titles that serve beneath them. Some of these agents work in the open as diplomats and consuls, others in secret as spies, agitators, and provocateurs. Most agents in Nidal spend their time hunting down apostates and heretics, seeking to purge the nation of inappropriate influences. Those acting abroad seek out positions in rival nations' halls of power. Umbral Court agents' loyalty to their overlords and ideals does not extend to other agents. Many an agent has fallen to a poisoned dagger from a rival seeking greater power. These minor treacheries are overlooked, sometimes even rewarded. so long as they do not interfere with the relative peace and order of Nidal. Regardless of their methods, all serve the greater glory of the Umbral Court and the Black Triune in turn. Membership within the Umbral Court itself is not hereditary, but bestowed based on piety and merit. Although there is no formal title accompanying elevation, foreigners seeking safety are recommended to address members as master or mistress. Upon ascension, each member undergoes a transformative ritual, as discussed earlier in my culture section, that marks their elevated status. Although there are dozens of members, some of the most prominent figures in the Umbral Court include Master Eloyander of Ridwan, a powerful elder druid, who is also a lord of the Uskwood. Eloyander, with his white hair, black eyes, and robes of living spider-spun webs, presents an otherworldly aura. He leads the clandestine Shades of the Uskwood, a druidic cabal rumored to plot terrible sabotages against Cheliax despite Nidal's formal alliance with the Empire. High Mistress Phalanth of the Shadowmoor, a human aristocrat and prominent member of the Umbral Court and the acting governess of the capital city of Pangolais. She is an exquisite yet stern woman, her ivory hair streaked with black, and she favors flowing grey gowns adorned with iridescent black feathers. As an administrator, she is competent and unemotional, but her personal life is marked by excesses, and she has personally seen to the demise of many of her former lovers. Master Colas, a vampire sorcerer and an advisor to Queen Abigail Thune II in Egorian, Colas emanates an unsettling yet suave presence, garbed in austere dark robes with silver fastenings, reminiscent of his origins as a shadow caller of the Dusk Hall. He staunchly upholds Nidal's alliance with Cheliax, viewing it as the pinnacle of centuries of Nidalese patience. Any threat to this alliance is intolerable to him, and he seeks to validate his vague suspicions regarding Eloyander's plots against Cheliax, eager for the chance to strike down his rival. The Midnight General Kivisier of Ridwan. This large and heavily armored Shadow Lord champion of Zonkuthon is the member of the Umbral Court responsible for overseeing the Midnight Citadel of Ridwan, and all three branches of the Adamant Guard, the military arm of Nidal. He is tall, stoic, and intimidating, and his military experience dates back to many operations taken during the Chelish Civil War. Mistress Melaine the Sundimmer. This half-elf bard was a highly decorated agent provocateur for many years, before she joined the Umbral Court proper. With her captivating charm and persuasion, she specialized in sowing jealousy, distrust, and resentment, destroying relationships and manipulating her victims' self-esteem to transform them into instruments of bitter envy, particularly among the leaders of good-aligned nations, much to the delight of her dark god. Master Mikos Rorik. This vampire leads the quasi-mercenary Adamant Company, an offshoot of the state-run army known as the Adamant Guard. Mikos travels extensively from Pangolais. His deceptively gentle manner hides a ruthless leader, whose warrior fanatics hire out to external employers, unleashing cruelty upon captured foes and civilians alike, to effectively demoralize opposing forces. It is said that such is the reputation of the Adamant Company that their mere arrival on the battlefield often leads to swift surrenders from the enemy. Mistress Viraine of Pangolais. A Caligny ranger who hides her face behind a charcoal-grey veil adorned with spiked steel rings, Viraine's movements exhibit a fluid grace. She has received special permission from the court to hunt down and recover artifacts linked to forbidden outside faiths. Currently, Viraine is on the quest to recover the Harp of Knight's Hope, a Desnan artifact lost in the Uskwood. This harp is highly valuable and said to hold the power to inspire encouraging dreams and banish shadows. The Adamant Guard and the Adamant Company. The Adamant Guard is the nation of Nidal's military forces. Traditionally, the Midnight Lord soldiers do not train against mortal armies, for Nidal has rarely set its sights beyond its divinely set borders and considers defense largely unnecessary while Zonkuthon shields their land. Although with the shifting geopolitics of recent years, this might well be changing as well. Instead, the Adamant Guard has traditionally trained for three purposes: to crush any hint of heresy among the faithful, to neutralize escaped thralls or other wandering monsters that might threaten the populace, and to provide defenses against immortal foes that might be considered a true adversary to the concerns of Zonkuthon. They are headquartered in the Midnight Citadel in Ridwan, and because of their broad charter, they don't just produce fighters, but also a large number of inquisitors, magi, rangers, and war priests. Under the leadership of Midnight General Kivisier, the Guard is divided into three branches: the Soldiery, under the charge of Commandant General Maydel of Ridwan; the Mages, or Arcane Auxiliaries and Bound Nightmare Beasts called from the Rifts, under the command of Commandant General Zerian of the Dusk Hall; and the clerics and war priests who are responsible not just for combat operations and divine magic support, but also for updating or redacting histories and holy texts, under the leadership of Night Speaker Virik of the Uskwood. Apostle Velstrax also serve in the Guard, rewarding faithful Kuthites with their agonizing prayers and binding wayward souls with seductive orations, though the Velstrax serving in the Adamant Guard have their own less well-understood leadership structure. The Adamant Company is an offshoot of the Adamant Guard, and they work more discreetly as the Black Triune's enforcers. When the Black Triune's members suspect that their people might be disloyal or fomenting rebellion, they send this quasi-mercenary company to stamp out undesirables as needed. The Adamant Company and its leader, the vampire Mikos Rorik, do also sometimes accept non-state jobs when the company's resources permit, giving outsiders the possibly false impression that they are more of a mercenary company than a state organ with a less restrictive agenda that they actually are. The Midnight Guard. Officially, the Midnight Guard are an elite force of Nidalese shadow callers, spellcasters, typically wizards, who specialize in shadow magic. Unlike the Adamant Guard, who work almost exclusively in Nidal, or the Adamant Company, who typically work in Nidal but may take assignments abroad, the Midnight Guard work almost exclusively abroad. The majority of them work on loan for House Thrune, and many can be found supporting the Chelish military as well. There, the Midnight Guard's official duties have often involved helping quell Chelish rebellions in cities. The Midnight Guards, however, are not limited to Cheliax. They can be found anywhere that is open to aid from the Kuthites, including such remote places as Irison, the Hold of Belkzen, Geb, and possibly even the Gravelands. Whether the Nidalese allies acknowledge this or not, the Midnight Guard also function as covert spies for the Black Triune, passing information as needed to the Nidalese about their allies. The Isolationist faction, especially the Shades of the Uskwood. During the 300-year period known as the Shadowbreak, anti-Kuthite sentiment swelled quickly, and a number of influential individuals spoke out against the court and the Triune. As we know from my history section, their dissent sparked a bloody reprisal known as the Midnight Inquisitions, during which masked agents of the Umbral court quickly rounded up anyone suspected of insurrectionary speech or action and sentencing them to public execution by torture. Eventually, these inquisitions restored order to Nidal's cities, yet they were unable to make any progress at all against the oldest of Nidal's organizations, the Shades of the Uskwood. The Shades remain the heart of Nidal's isolationist faction even to this day, with an ethos essentially unchanged since the nation's founding. These druids date back to the dawn of Nidal. In their view, the natural world has never been a hospitable place for humanity. In fact, they view civilization as an infliction that the natural order must endure, akin to the symptoms of a disease. The Shades of the Uskwood staunchly believe that Nidal's submission to Cheliax during the occupation exemplified the flaws and frailties of even the strongest of human societies. Despite enduring harsh torture at the hands of the Midnight Inquisitors, the Shades displayed extreme resilience. Consequently, the Midnight Inquisitors eventually shifted their focus to more pressing matters, and left the Shades to their strange plots. Since that time, the Shades of the Uskwood have enjoyed freedom in pursuing their mysterious agenda, leading some to speculate that they may have the tacit approval of the Nidalese government. To give a sense of the kind of strange actions taken by the Shades, each year a rash of disappearances coincides with the Eternal Kiss, a Kuthite holiday that takes place during the first new moon of the year. This is because the Shades each year seek sacrifices for one of the group's oldest projects, the nurturing of an alien hive queen. Long have the Shades of the Uskwood sought to discover examples of alien entities akin in nature to those forces that transformed Umbral into Zon-Kuthon so many eons past. Several years ago, their search revealed a singularly vile and frightening form of life, a race of strange creatures that live to consume or transform everything they find, known simply as the Hive in the common tongue. The leader of the Shades of the Uskwood, Master Eloyander, helped to engineer the capture of the Hive Queen, and brought her to the center of his order's power, a region of the Uskwood known as the Uskheart. Within this hollow spire resides the Hive Queen he captured, a dangerous and fecund monster that does little more than lay eggs and feed on the victims the Shades provide her. Black chitinous armor covers this 17-foot-tall insectile creature that weighs over 2,000 pounds, and caustic saliva drips from her mandibles. Now and then the Hive Queen spares one of her victims, instead transforming that person into one of her corrupted spawn. The spawn are put to work as slaves, while the hive warriors born from her hatchery are quickly appropriated by the druids and brought into specialized hive camps to train in the ways of their order. It is said that Master Eloyander's second-in-command, an aging albino druid known simply as the Master of True Revelations, has smuggled a few of these hive warriors out to other locations throughout Avestan, though for what purpose none can say. The Uskhart caves used by the Shades of the Uskwood also house a large number of Migos and their otherworldly minions. These strange alien planar travelers have been long-time allies of the Shades, though once again the nature of this alliance and what common purpose they share is unknown to the laypersons not initiated into this ancient druidic sect. The Shades of the Uskwood are a peculiar order, and have developed specialized druidic practices that set them apart from other druids, practices that go far beyond the mere eschewing the use of fire or not wearing metal. All Shades craft a personal Umbral token that ties their soul and doings to the Uskwood's fell power. Most druids who join the organization create their tokens soon after being welcomed to the Uskwood, for until a prospective Shade does so, she is not allowed into the druidic inner circle. Indeed, those druids who claim to wish to join the order, but who do not bond to the woods in this manner within a few months of joining, invariably find themselves hunted down and sacrificed to the Midnight Lord. The Expansionist faction, especially the graduates of Dusk Hall and the School of the Pale Sun. A great number of the court's sophisticated urbanite contingent graduated from the School of the Pale Sun, a prestigious center of learning in Elith Lauren that is greatly renowned for educating agents, emissaries, and shadow callers across the nation and beyond, and from the Dusk Hall, the storied magical school of Pangolais, which teaches the arcane arts along with the deeper mysteries of Zon Kuthon. The graduates stand in stark contrast to the Shades of the Uskwood, and they are the heart of the Nidalese expansionist movement. The leader of this faction is Master Colas, a prominent member of the Umbral court, an advisor to Cheliax, and a thought leader in the expansionist movement. He views the Chelish alliance as a great opportunity for Nidal to expand its reach across Golarion and shepherd more souls into Zon Kuthon's keeping. The expansionist-isolationist dispute now sits at the heart of Nidalese political debate. For 10,000 years, Nidal maintained a strict isolationist doctrine, a time the Shades wish to return to. But for the intellectual elites of the great colleges, there is no turning back the clock to this time. And anyway, they claim, it was this policy of isolationism that led to the great defeat at the hands of the Ardenites 400 years ago. If Master Colas had his way, he would cement the deep relationship with Cheliax and form other strategic partnerships with nations around the world that have also, in their own ways, embraced the darkness. The adherents of the Belvais doctrine. In addition to the expansionist-isolationist schism, a second long-enduring point of political contention in the court revolves around the teachings of the Belvais doctrine, a Kuthite theology that posits a distinct perspective on pain. According to this doctrine, true pain is exclusive to the living, as pain serves as a natural warning signal to living organisms of potential harm or impending death. Those who adhere to the Belvais doctrine believe that undead creatures, being already deceased, cannot experience true pain. Instead, they argue that the agony felt by undead beings is primarily spiritual or emotional, falling under the category of misery rather than genuine pain. Adherents of the Belvais doctrine consider undead to be less devoted Kuthites, asserting that undead creatures are no longer capable of experiencing Zon Kuthon's blessing in its purest form. As a result, they argue against elevating undead above equally devout living worshippers within the faith's hierarchy. This leads to animosity between living members of the Umbral court, who support the Belvais doctrine, and undead members who often perceive themselves as inherently more pious due to their everlasting existence devoted to worshipping the Midnight Lord. The Belvais doctrine also holds a special regard for Velstrax, however, especially those who have integrated living flesh into their immortal forms, enabling them to experience true pain. Ordinary outsiders, such as angels and demons, are ineligible to receive the blessings of the Midnight Lord because they lack mortality, the doctrine emphasizes. But Velstrax, who have intentionally altered their bodies to feel authentic pain, are true servants of Zon Kuthon, and are not denounced in the same manner as the undead are by this faction. The Resistance. Not everyone in Nidal succumbs to the dominance of the Umbral court. Scattered across the nation, from remote villages to the hidden corners of Pangolais, there are defiant souls who dream of a day when their enslaved land will break free of the oppressive shadow of the Midnight Lord. Though the rebellion remains small and disorganized, it persists. Its members mostly work alone or in small trusted groups, carrying out secretive and small-scale actions. Various paths lead individuals to rebellion. Some seek vengeance for terrible wrongs inflicted upon their families. Others discover alternative ideas through encounters with foreign acquaintances, like traders from far-off lands or tutors instructing the privileged children of the upper classes. Some rebels are foreigners themselves, infiltrating Nidal with the purpose of undermining its oppressive rule. Among the rebels are Desnans, oracles and shamans who often hail from the Atteran Reaches and serve Desna, the goddess of dreams and luck, and their gentle and hopeful message resonates with the modern descendants of the horse lords who once held her in high reverence. Other factions with an interest in freedom and revolution have turned their attention to Nidal as well. The nearby Silver Ravens of Ravenel, the Firebrands of Vidrian and the Shackles further south, and even various Varisian factions have a vested interest in seeing a free Nidal as a neighbour. The regions of Nidal. Although Nidal isn't formally divided into provinces or prefectures, it is comprised of 5 significant geographic regions. In the centre of the nation lies the Uskwood. This immense forest cloaks the heartland of Nidal, blotting out the sun beneath its unnaturally dense leaves. This is the home of the druids known as the Shades of the Uskwood, and the Uskhart, their fiercely guarded and deeply secret centre of power. It is also here along the Usk River that bisects the forest that Nidal's capital city of Pangolais can be found. From this centre, moving clockwise around the country, starting with the westernmost region, we can see the Northplains. This region was named by the Taldans, and so ironically lie in the southern part of the country. The Northplains as a geographic region actually stretches across both Nidal and the adjacent nation of Ravenel, encompassing all the lands from the Yolubilis River to the Usk River. The Nidalese portion of the Northplains therefore stretches from the Usk River to the nation's border. The largest city in this region is Ethel-Loren, which sits along the Usk River. North of the plains are the Horse Lord's Fields, which range from Conqueror's Bay to encompass the Umberfell Woods. The largest city in this region is the significant port city of Nisroch, for which the Bay of Nisroch is named. Between the Umberfell and the Upper Usk lie the Atteran Ranches, the northernmost part of Nidal, and the territories where the greatest resistance to Nidalese rule can be felt. The city of Whitemound is the social and economic heart of Nidal's northern plains. Just east of the Atteran Ranches are the Mindspin Foothills, which comprise the northeastern portion of Nidal from the Usk Lake to the Mindspin Mountains. The Mindspin Foothills are the least densely populated region in Nidal. The largest city that technically falls in the formally recognized Nidalese boundaries is actually the independent dwarven city of the Glimmerhold, which I won't discuss in this video as I've already covered it in my Near Mathis and Malthun deep dive. The largest Nidalese city here is the mining town of Ash Hollow. Finally, to the south of the Mindspin Foothills is the Umbral Basin. Situated on the border between Malthun and Nidal is a narrow mountain pass, shrouded in perpetual gloom. Sunlight seems to glance away from the rocky walls here, a phenomenon explained not by their steepness, but by the fact that a perpetual shadow storm roils in the pass, an unstable and constantly mobile portal to the shadow plane. The largest city in this region is Ridwan, the home of the Midnight Guard and Nidal's military academies. Important locations in the Uskwood. Pangolais. Beneath the ebon canopy of the Uskwood, the city of Pangolais exudes a mesmerizing charm, gleaming in countless shades of grey. Luminous white-cobbled streets weave like streams of softened moonlight, flanked by sharply arched cathedrals adorned with rose-tinted windows and majestic academies. Within the aged libraries lie the profound wisdom and poignant tales of Earthfall survivors, while behind intricately carved walls depicting tortured souls in silver and obsidian, scholars delve into the enigmas of the dark tapestry and the deepest realms of the shadow plane. At the heart of the city stands the grand cathedral of exquisite agony, the most revered temple to Zon-Kuthon in all of Golarion. In refined cafes surrounded by the fragrance of moonflowers and accompanied by the haunting melodies of Kuthite-bladed harps, vampires and Caligni engage in conversation along agents of the Umbral court and select foreign dignitaries. In the capital city of shadows, the distinction between day and night fades to insignificance. For the wealthy and well-connected denizens of Pangolais, life flows with grace and ease. The city offers unrivaled experiences in dining, jewelry, and glasswork, showcasing the finest craftsmanship. Spectacles abound, including the mesmerizing Kuthite chain dancers, who twirl spiked chains like ribbons while suspended in midair. However, for the poor and unfortunate, the city reveals a much darker reality. To them, Pangolais is a city of predators, where sadists roam freely, preying on the vulnerable with impunity. Even the smallest transgression, such as speaking out of turn, can result in a servant losing their tongue. In this merciless city, all masters exhibit cruelty, and there is no escape from the torment. The ultimate authority in Nidal lies with the enigmatic Black Triune, which are also rumored to reside in the city. Yet sightings of them are rare, as day-to-day governance falls under the purview of High Mistress Phalanth of the Shadowmoor. As a prominent figure in the Umbral court and the effective governor of Pangolais, Phalanth wields considerable influence, but her propensity for hedonism has garnered her many enemies as well. Some famous points of interest in Pangolais include the Atelier Kiritane. The Velstrak's unending quest for personal reinvention leads many of them to not only graft portions of living victims' bodies onto their own, but also to undertake a macabre process of shedding their own skin, flesh, and bone as they sculpt themselves into ever-evolving forms. A significant amount of this discarded material finds its way to the Atelier Kiritane, the expansive centre of Pangolais couture. The atelier is managed by the talented fetchling designer Limris Kiritane, who skillfully repurposes chitin skin and bone into stylish accessories, sought after by both devout Kuthites and other affluent fashion enthusiasts of peculiar taste. Kiritane's creations are exquisitely crafted, boasting a level of luxury that can impress even the most world-weary Chelish noble. Many of these accessories are designed to be attached to one's flesh using pierced rings, appealing particularly to the Kuthite faithful. Basin Hall. In its heyday, this magnificent three-story structure was a cherished orphanage and religious school, catering to the children of Pangolais. However, its fortunes took a dark turn when the headmaster Satriel Basin was unmasked as an apostate and subjected to public disgrace in the town square. In the aftermath of the scandal, Basin Hall fell into disrepair and was left abandoned for years, now serving as an outwardly grand yet derelict relic of its former glory. Situated in a less esteemed and secluded neighborhood, it has become a haven for many fetchlings seeking to maintain a low profile and anonymity. The Cathedral of Embodied Wisdom. Among the Velstrak's earliest contributions to Nidalese civilization were memory chains, potent artifacts imbued with the power to capture the experiences of torment endured by their victims, allowing them to be shared and relived endlessly. To pay homage to these decadent benefactors and their divine gifts, the Kuthites collected these memories and enshrined them in the Cathedral of Embodied Wisdom. The cathedral's design boasts a sharp-peaked structure with a Gothic appearance, transitioning from obsidian black at its base to the softest ivory at the tips of its bell towers. However, the cathedral's chains contain more than just pain. In addition to the memories of the suffering, they also preserve fragments of the subject's personal histories and knowledge. Hidden among the records of misery are pieces of long-forgotten information, drawing the attention of seekers in pursuit of esoteric lore. Among them are rumored to be the whereabouts of an original copy of the Secrets of the Dreaming Dark, forgotten rituals of the ancient rune lords, and the elusive passphrases to access the warded tombs of long-deceased warlords of Old Sarkoris. Furthermore, it is widely known that the vaults of the cathedral hold a treasure trove of ancient knowledge from the eras of Thassalon and Aslant, and perhaps even from the times of the enigmatic Algorthus who preceded them. The Cathedral of Exquisite Agony. During the Chelish Civil War, Nidal threw its support behind House Thrune, and when the Black Triune regained power, the once granted religious freedoms came to an abrupt end. Any form of worship outside Zon-Kuthon's domain was brutally oppressed, and the Cathedral of Exquisite Agony played a pivotal role in what was known as the Midnight Inquisitions. These inquisitions aimed to seek out and punish those who dared to teach false religions to Nidal's populace. Within the Cathedral of Exquisite Agony, a strict hierarchy governs the priests, where superiors' commands are unquestionable, and defiance can lead to imprisonment in the dreaded Bastille of the Lost. The Church follows a merit-based system, evaluating priests based on their physical endurance, capacity for inflicting and enduring pain, and their ability to unlock the divine magic granted by the Midnight Lord. The most accomplished priests rise to become rectors, overseeing various functions of the cathedral. The eldest among the rectors holds the esteemed title of the Hierarch, presiding over the Cathedral of Exquisite Agony and serving as the head of the Kuthite Church in Nidal. Residing in the perpetual darkness of Pangolais, most priests of the cathedral bear a pale complexion akin to death, adorned with scars. Some priests take their devotion to Zon-Kuthon even further, by undergoing radical body modifications. These priests don garments of black leather and silver, and often accentuating their appearances with clawed rings and dark eye makeup. The joyful things serve as macabre mascots or symbols of the institution, devoted followers who undergo a grueling ritual, sacrificing their limbs and non-vital organs. This grants them powers from the plane of shadows, but also turns them into embodiments of pain, sacrifice, and eternal torment, the fate awaiting Kuthites in the afterlife. These exemplars hold influential positions among other Kuthites, and any temple housing one or more joyful things is considered blessed by the gods of darkness. The current hierarch of the cathedral is Hierarch Shartain, who handles all official business. He assigns targets for the church's inquisitors, manages its wealth and workforce, and oversees other crucial resources. Shartain, an ancient vampire, bears Zon Kuthon's verses branded into his skin, drawn from the holy text the Umbral leaves. Despite his busy schedule, Shartain spends only a few hours each day in his office, often residing in his grand labyrinthine mansion, one of the largest privately owned residences in Pangolais. The Chain House. This 3-story fortified building is strategically located near the Cathedral of Exquisite Agony, and serves as the headquarters of the Chain Guard, Pangolais' city watch. Leading the Chain Guard is Captain Merciel, a pragmatic and no-nonsense individual. Merciel is not an ardent Kuthite, rather she is a practical leader with little tolerance for extremism or grandiosity. While her official title is Commander of Chains, Guardian of Shade, and Exalted Keeper of the Midnight Lord's Silenced Agonies, Merciel finds the full title an embarrassing and unnecessary exaggeration, preferring instead the simple title of Captain. Frostfell Manor. This picturesque mansion, crafted from pale stone and intricately cut crystal, is enveloped in an enchanting aura of twinkling frost that lingers in the air. This manor house serves as a special retreat, exclusively reserved for esteemed visitors hailing from the frosty lands of Irrisen, where Zon Kuthon's worship holds some small sway among the ruthless winter witches and the jaded, indulgent aristocracy. Frostfell Manor is designed to cater to the tastes of the Jadwiga, Irrisen's hereditary nobility. These aristocrats are accustomed to opulence and grandeur, far beyond the typical austerity of Nidalese life. As such, Frostfell Manor was meticulously constructed to offer the utmost luxury and comfort befitting their noble status. The Gold Manticore Font. Located among the impoverished and marginalized corners of Pangolais is a masterfully sculpted fountain, featuring 17 beasts supporting its grand obsidian basin. Among these, a striking obsidian manticore bears 3 golden tufts in its mane, which has given the fountain its name among the locals. For centuries, downtrodden citizens have shared the clandestine knowledge that whispering a heartfelt wish into the manticore's ear on the first night of the new moon might lead to its fulfillment. Genuine needs and virtuous hearts are said to be the keys to success. The fountain's true secret, however, lies in the watchful gaze of Astarathian, a gold dragon who conceals his true identity within Pangolais, assuming the guise of a human. Under this disguise he maintains a greengrocer's shop, with generous prices and an inclination for charity. During the appointed nights, Astarathian keeps a vigilant eye on the fountain. When he deems a wish worthy, he employs his considerable power, or recruits others to aid him in fulfilling the wish without revealing his true nature. The Moth and the Flame. This beloved tavern in Pangolais is renowned for its captivating floor shows, enhanced with mesmerizing illusions. Among the most popular performances is the tale of a magical moth, irresistibly drawn to a Velstrax flame. The show reaches a dramatic climax with the apparent immolation of the moth dancer, chained and tormented before the mesmerized audience. The dancer's grace and talent, combined with spellbinding illusions, never fail to captivate and earn the appreciation of the crowd. Unbeknownst to many, however, the tavern also serves as a discreet hub for Desnan worshippers in Pangolais, using its shows as a clever cover for their gatherings. The proprietor, Theanor of Nisroch, and the lead dancer, Lethalia Silvermoth, both devoted followers of Desna, use the moth and the flame to secretly coordinate their activities. Although they avoid meeting at the tavern to minimize risks, Theanor and Lethalia skillfully relay messages, arrange supply drops, and even smuggle fellow worshippers in and out of the city. New Callignos. Nestled within Pangolais is a vibrant community of the Caligni, who affectionately refer to their district as New Callignos. A deep yearning to reconnect with their ancient Aslanti heritage drives them to meticulously recreate what they imagine their ancestors' original settlements must have been like. Distinctive architectural features, such as gracefully swooping rooflines and intricately tiled walkways, lend New Callignos a unique charm. A rare sight in the monochromatic city, The beautiful stars of Aslant, purple-hearted white flowers preserved in the Garden of the Ancients, grace the window boxes of private residences and adorn street crossings, filling the air with subtle fragrances that evoke the distant memories of the Caligni. Despite their ardent efforts to resurrect Aslanti customs, the true authenticity of these traditions remains uncertain. Caligni scholars dedicate lifetimes to scouring ancient records for fragments of their heritage, yet Aslant's vastness and diversity make it challenging to piece together an accurate picture of the past. Instead, New Calygnos becomes a patchwork of imaginings, an imperfectly remembered world fashioned from the various threads pulled from distant corners. While not an authentic recreation of Aslanti reality, it does stand as a testament to the Caligni's deep connection to their cultural origins. The Orakel House. This vast manor house, crafted from dark stone and adorned with subtle hues of grey-tinted glass, finds its place in close proximity to the Chelish embassy, becoming the favoured residence for most foreigners visiting Pangolais. While outsiders are free to visit the city, the watchful eyes of the Umbral court always linger, preferring to keep a subtle but continuous surveillance on those from beyond Nidal's borders. Consequently, other innkeepers either outright refuse to accommodate foreigners or attempt to deter them through exorbitant prices, macabre displays of devotion to Zon-Kuthon, or the simple redirection to the Orakel House. The Shrine of Convocations. Twice a year, during the seasons of spring and autumn, the distinguished Umbral court gathers at the solemn Shrine of Convocations. Within these hallowed walls, important matters concerning the people of Nidal are addressed. The court proclaims its edicts to the nation, resolves contentious disputes among its esteemed members, and conducts votes on the inclusion of new individuals proposed to join their ranks. The solemn atmosphere of the Shrine of Convocations witnesses more than just formal proceedings. It serves as a platform for prominent members and agents involved in foreign policy, domestic affairs, and matters of theology and arcane studies to present their reports. These reports will shape the decisions of the court and reflect Nidal's outlook over the coming years, guiding the nation's direction in matters both within and beyond its borders. Beyond the capital of Pangolais, the Uskwood includes many other important locations. The House of Lyz. The Shadow Break marked a unique chapter in Nidalese history, a 3-century period when the veil separating Nidal from other nations was partially lifted. During this extraordinary time, Nidalese citizens caught glimpses of life beyond their borders, and adventurous foreigners were granted the privilege of venturing into the shadowy realm. It was during this era, not long after the treaty granting Chelish sovereignty was signed, that Delaris Yevengio envisioned and established the House of Lyz. Delaris, a shrewd entrepreneur, recognized the potential in the newly opened Nidalese border. He designed this grand estate with the intention of inviting renowned storytellers from across the Inner Sea region to come and marvel at the previously inaccessible country. To further enhance attendance and interest in his venture, Delaris devised a contest. Every 5 years, the most talented storytellers from far and wide were invited to compete for the prestigious title of Truthmaker. Participants were obliged to lodge at the House of Lyz at exorbitant festival rates, of course, and the only other requirement for entry was to contribute a unique curiosity to the estate's growing collection. The House of Lyz quickly became a thriving success. Its reputation, the chance to experience Nidal firsthand, and the allure of its intriguing assortment of curiosities drew visitors year after year. Those who had taken part in the competition, whether they emerged as winners or not, proudly called themselves the Guild of the Liars. Delaris retired a wealthy man, and the subsequent generations of his family carried on the institution's legacy after him. The regional fame of the House of Lyz suffered a sharp decline when Nidal once again sealed its borders. But somehow the Guild of Lyz endured, convening every 5 years to appoint a new truthmaker in a secret ceremony. The winner gains access to the invaluable collection of artifacts in the manor for the years to come. Currently, the esteemed truthmaker is Takina, a well-travelled Garundi woman with a complex history with the Pathfinder Society. Since her victory in the contest, she has made the House of Lyz her home, and gradually taken over the administration of the estate from the remaining Yevengio family members. The Castle of the Captive Sun. The lord of this magnificent woodland keep is Master Volazni Dazar, one of the oldest and wealthiest vampires in Nidal, and a long-time member of the Umbral court, as well as a devout Kuthite who embraces agony in a way only a creature of the night truly can. The Castle of the Captive Sun takes its name from Volazny's various guests, a collection of celestial-blooded captives he keeps in luxury, alongside an astounding treasury of holy and solar-related artifacts gathered over the years. Volasny keeps Aasimars, Sarenites, and other holy creatures as his preferred feeding stock, as their divinely tinged blood offers a delectable searing pain in addition to sustenance. The artifacts, meanwhile, the vampire uses in profound devotions to his dark god. He wields their light-bringing powers upon his own flesh. Beyond the vampire count and his captives, the castle is also populated by his many Dhampir offspring that he has sired in the long years of his existence. The Winter Garden. Once a peaceful country retreat belonging to Master Orelok, a Shadow Lord necromancer of the Umbral court, this secluded cottage was a place where he sought solace and respite from the burdens of his position. Immersed in rare books and surrounded by an elaborate garden of boxwood, cypresses, and quince, he found tranquility here. However, it is said Orelok committed a grave act of heresy against the Midnight Lord, and as punishment, a dense fog enveloped the land, and he became ensnared within its chilling grasp. Orelok now stands as a cursed lord, his domain stretching across the once serene cottage, its sprawling gardens, and its surrounding farmlands. Within the disorienting mists that shroud these lands, the subjects of Orelok's dark experiments wander like ghosts, reliving the horrors they once endured, and in some tragic cases inflicting the same torment upon unfortunate passers-by. A Nemor devil named Lethadim roams freely through the territory, preying upon the memories of the trapped farmers, their families, and any travelers unfortunate enough to find themselves within the fog's grasp. The Shadow Caverns and the city of Raulos. First discovered during the Everwar, around 4 centuries ago, these caverns are far more than just the tomb of the unfortunate Chelish legionnaires who initially stumbled upon their depths. During the Shadowbreak, explorers seeking to unravel the fate of the lost troops discovered that the uncharted caverns extended much deeper into the earth than anticipated, eventually leading to the Darklands lair of Narvoth. Through peaceful contact and amicable relations with the Caligny settlement known as Raulos, the caverns transformed into a lucrative and bustling slave trade route between Nidal and the Darklands. The Caligny of Raulos oversee a large dungeon. Here, crude iron cages imprison various captive humanoids brought to Nidal by the least scrupulous pirates from the shackles. These transactions are supervised by the Umbral dragon Visceroth, a devoted follower of the Midnight Lord who guards the caverns and ensures there are no attempted escapes. Despite its relatively small size, Raulos enjoys tremendous prosperity as a gateway into Narvoth, with relatively easy access to the surface. The insular residents of Raulos are fiercely protective of their holdings, and any travelers seeking passage through the settlement, whether to reach the surface or venture into the Darklands from above, must either prove their value to the inhabitants or pay exorbitant passage fees. Raulos is also frequented by numerous Obes, strange native denizens of the Shadowplane who seem to have a special relationship with the Caligny of the city. The Sunless Pond. After Earthfall, the Nidalese faced the challenge of cultivating crops in a world devoid of sunlight. In response to this pressing need, Zon Kuthon bestowed upon them the Sunless Pond. This unique wellspring consists of inky dark waters that possess the ability to stimulate plant growth. In the present day, the Uskwood Druids still diligently carry on the tradition of distributing jars filled with the precious waters to the peasants living under their governance. Annually, as they collect taxes on behalf of the Umbral court and assess local children for arcane aptitude, the Druids also hand out carefully measured jars of the Sunless Pond's mystical water. Despite the weak return of sunlight to parts of Nidal, the farmers continue to rely on the pond's waters to fortify their crops and ensure their survival. The Summer Grove. Accessible only during the summer months, the Summer Grove is a secret grove, likely connected to the First World, the realm of the Fae. In stark contrast with the rest of Nidal, the Summer Grove is altogether wholesome, a place of beauty and serenity, bright with wildflowers and lush grasses beneath fragrant linden and sweet cherry trees. Furthermore, whatever Fae power protects this place knows what it is doing, as the Shade Druids of the Uskwood seem blind to the place, and they have never disturbed it. For those that have learned of its existence, the grove is still elusive, however, and those who have stumbled across it once are unlikely to retrace their steps back to it again. The Shadow Reach Lodge. Over a century ago, a half-elf adventurer affiliated with the Pathfinder Society named Ilneric Simvanshin escaped the city of Westcrown while carrying a revered ancient artifact dedicated to Viravaxis, a long-deceased demon lord of Shadow. Despite the demon lord's demise, the relic retained its ancient power, draining the life force of its carrier. Upon his death, Ilneric was reborn as a vampire, drawn to seek refuge in the dark and shadowy depths of the Uskwood. There he established a sanctuary where he could study the enigmatic artifact that granted him such unnatural abilities. Although Ilneric departed Shadowreach half a century ago, returning to his former home in Westcrown, he left behind guardians to protect the lodge from intruders. These guardians include eerie shadow creatures, mysterious gloomwings, and other enigmatic beings, both within and outside the lodge. Recently, a new mistress has taken residence at the house, Ilneric's Dampier daughter, Valnika Sivanshin. Carrying on her father's legacy, Valnika possesses her own sorceress lineage of shadows. She has returned from a recent tour of duty with the Midnight Guard, and now seeks to delve deeper into the eldritch secrets of the Shadowreach, aided by some like-minded Dampier companions. The Uskheart. This is the deepest redoubt of the Shades of the Uskwood, an ancient and influential faction led by Master Eloyander. Other leaders of the Shades also convene here. Among them are Palois White-Eyes, a dual-cursed oracle of great power, and Speaker Tralahi, a skilled fetchling summoner with a focus on shadow manipulation. Together they serve as Eloyander's trusted lieutenants. As previously mentioned, the Uskheart is not only home to the Shades, but also harbors otherworldly alien horrors. The faction has formed alliances with these eldritch beings or bound them to serve their cause, including a captive hive queen and a group of enigmatic Migos. At the center of the Uskheart there is a grand and ancient edifice, centered on a massive dome of stone. The structure's exterior bears the marks of time, adorned with lichen and veiled in hanging strands of moss. Despite its eerie appearance, the craftsmanship displayed here is nothing short of exquisite. This is the Temple of Mutilations, the holiest site to the Druidic order of the Shades of the Uskwood. The Lost Lodge. Centuries ago, a cult of devoted Desnans took refuge in the depths of the Uskwood and established a hidden lodge using magical veils to shield it from the relentless pursuit of the Shades. Within this clandestine sanctuary, the Desnans carefully safeguarded precious relics of their faith, essential supplies and weapons, and a trove of intelligence on the plans and weaknesses of their Kuthite adversaries. Despite their cautious efforts to conceal the lodge, the tenacious Druids eventually managed to track down the Desnan cultists. Over the course of several years, this group was either destroyed or forced into seclusion. As the last of the Desnans passed away, their once thriving safe house sank into obscurity, concealed from the eyes of any passers-by by their ancient magics. Crosspine. The village on the southeastern border of the Uskwood is primarily notable for sending an unusually high number of its children into arcane and druidic disciplines. Two of its more well-known natives are the shadow caller Isiem and the shadow-casting sorcerer Ascaros. The village of Crosspine, as well as the characters of Isiem and Ascaros, are featured in the Pathfinder Tales novels Nightglass and Nightblade. Important locations in the Northplains. Elith Lorin. Nestled beside the flowing Usk River, the largest settlement in the Northplains is Elith Lorin. At the heart of the market square stands the Fountain of Shaylin's Lament, a breathtaking masterpiece crafted by the renowned sculptor Melatir of Nisroch. Surrounding the square, handsome limestone buildings display the Chelish influence that followed the Everwar. Here, the Bridge of Vainglory, another stunning remnant of Chelish occupation, spans the Usk, linking the northern and southern sections of the town. Elith Lorin serves as a crucial transportation hub for Nidal, with its port receiving livestock and produce from the Atteran Ranches and even from nearby Ravenel. These goods are then dispatched west to Nisroch or east to Pangolais. Some of the grand residences that once hosted Chelish dignitaries have been repurposed into state offices, attended by clerks and legates who ensure the country's needs are met. This town also plays a pivotal role in controlling the west, facilitating meetings between the spies of Nisroch and the inquisitors of Pangolais. Situated on a high hill, an old Ardnite church has been converted to the Midnight Lord. It has been reconsecrated as the Eye of Pangolais, and it is well known for its covert espionage activities. The true gem of Elith Lorin, however, is the renowned School of the Pale Sun. Its majestic campus, adorned with stately trees, dominates the town's south side. Considered second only to the Dusk Hall in Pangolais, the School of the Pale Sun is one of the most esteemed centers of learning in all of Nidal. A few Nidalese instructors, like Headmistress Virexia of Pangolais, prepare rare privileged students for missions abroad, educating them on how to discreetly practice the Midnight Lord's faith where it is not welcomed. The selection process for admission involves divination, and most students hail from Pangolais and Ridwan. Graduates of this school proudly bear the title of the Pale Sun. Helthier of the Midnight Citadel, a devoted inquisitor from an esteemed Pangolais lineage, oversees the town. His primary task is to prevent the disorder and laxity of Nisroch from spreading eastward. To achieve this, he employs a diverse network of informers and diligently inspects barges and carts. Privacy is a rarity in Elith Lorin, with most correspondence scrutinized by Helthier's vigilant eyes. While the fetchling community on the North Bank offers some solace from the watchful eyes of healthiers informants, they are also generally wary of outsiders. Black Sulphur Pool. To the southwest of Nisroch lies a tranquil pond, shrouded in eerie silence and seemingly fed by unseen sources. From a distance the pond appears dark and foreboding, but as one draws near, the waters reveal a surprising clarity. Not many know that the bottom of Black Sulphur Pool serves as a permanent portal to a mirror pool on the Shadow Plane. As Black Sulphur Pool lies about an hour's ride from the nearest town, making regular upkeep of the portal is a challenge for the pool's solitary Umbral agent, Lerol of Nisroch, who is tasked with maintaining alarm spells and minimal protections. He tends to avoid spending excessive time on the road, and as a result has allowed the protective spells to lapse more often than not. Thrune's Chance. Every year, the Chelish Embassy in Pangolais, in collaboration with the Umbral Court of Nidal, selects 5 Nidalese citizens who are granted a special opportunity. They are relocated to a small camp called Thrune's Chance in the south of the country for a year and collaborate on joint assignments beneficial to both Nidal and Cheliax. Upon fulfilling their service and avoiding any conflicts during their stay, these Nidalese citizens are rewarded with 50 gold pieces and have the option of being formally inducted as citizens of Cheliax and set free to pursue their own chosen paths within the Empire. In theory, the selection process appears random, with any Nidalese citizens having the chance to be considered for this unique opportunity. In reality, however, the selection process is often predetermined, influenced by bribes and other favors, leaving little room for chance. The Umbral Court supports the continuation of Thrune's Chance, as it serves as a diversion for those who might otherwise resort to illegal escapes or even rebellion. Families dedicate their efforts to ensure the success of chosen candidates, and these occasional triumphs inspire others to invest their hopes and resources in similar endeavors. The Tower of Slant Shadows. Rising like an enormous iron spike driven from the heavens into the ground, myths and tales have long surrounded this structure. Speculations abound about its depth, origin, and purpose, but few realize that it is part of the series of star towers scattered across Galarian. Crafted by the former incarnation of Zonkuthon, Umbral, these towers served as a prison to contain the evil god Rovagug deep within the planet. The Tower of Slant Shadows is guarded by a fearsome and malevolent figure known as Mother Ravel, a flesh weaver with the power to transform creatures into grotesque living tapestries of sentient flesh. Recently, a war party of Demodans, driven by a Thanatotic titan, have come seeking to tap into the tower's power to bring their master to the material plane. In spite of their arrival, Mother Ravel has, so far, remained an enigmatic and neutral observer to their mission, letting them contend with the tower's other guardians. Yet should the group prevail, they should be prepared to face her wrath before enacting their plans upon the tower. Ogdenford. Led by the authoritative Sheriff Joan Malston, a skilled hunter and well-regarded local leader, known to carefully pick his battles, the tranquil farming community of Ogdenford is usually a place of peace, where the locals prefer to avoid the watchful gaze of the Umbral Court. However, the town is now facing a profound dilemma that has left its residents torn between seeking the assistance of their shadowy superiors or dealing with the problem independently. Some years ago, a heavy rainstorm triggered a mudslide near the town, revealing a toppled pillar of eerie, green-flecked black stone, adorned with twisting, unsettling patterns. Since its discovery, strange and eerie occurrences have plagued Ogdenford. Whispering wails can be heard in the dead of night within their homes, and livestock has started birthing slimy, malformed, and already deceased offspring during the spring. As the situation escalates, Sheriff Malston and the residents of Ogdenford have grown increasingly desperate for answers and solutions to their mounting predicament. The Dauphinal Vineyard. Another holdover from Nidal's Shadowbreak period, founded by a member of an expatriated Chelish noble house, whose name has been expunged from the records, the vineyard's hills were planted with Alvarino grapes. The founder, a skilled vintner, astounded Chelish society by coaxing a light yet remarkably nuanced white wine from the grapes in Nidal's unique soil. However, the family's fortune turned for the worse when they opposed House Thrune during the Chelish Civil War. Subsequently, the Umbral Court claimed ownership of the estate, and the quality of the wine took a considerable hit, until they appointed Lyz of the Pale Sun, a Chelish-trained vintner and a graduate of the prestigious Elithlaran Academy, to oversee operations. Under Lyz's guidance, the Dauphinal Vineyard's reputation was gradually restored to its former glory, and its wine regained its position of prestige and high demand. Dauphinal Alvarino, a finicky wine to produce, is cherished for its crispness and herbal notes, accompanied by hints of pear and lemongrass. Its appearance in the glass resembles a liquid moonstone with a beautiful greyish luster. In Cheliax and Taldor, it is a particularly favoured wine during the hot summers. In Nidal, its popularity extends throughout the year, though procuring a bottle outside the Umbral court is a daunting task, as most is reserved for export. Hence, a bottle of Dauphinal Alvarino is considered a significant and valuable gift in Nidal. Evolar's Crossing. Along the winding Usk River and near the mouth of a pass through the Menador Mountains lies a place known as Evolar's Crossing. Here, a road follows the river's course, but there's no bridge to ease the crossing. Instead, those seeking passage must ford the gentle currents. Ages ago, during the early days of the Everwar, Commander Evolar led her Chelish army north into Nidal, attempting the first attack on Cheliax's northern neighbor. Tragically, the entire battalion was lost, leaving no survivors, but leaving behind a wealth of abandoned equipment. According to the locals, the site is haunted, the dark vengeance enacted by Zon Kuthon against those who dared challenge his realm. Some say there may be treasures hidden beneath the waters, but the price of seeking them is one's life, or worse, dissuading any treasure hunters from descending upon this eerie locale. However, the stories of hauntings and troubled undead are partly based on superstition. The true force behind the horrors is Zelika, an elder water elemental who claims herself Lord of the Southern Usk. Zelika has resided in this stretch of the river for many long millennia, but she and her allies became bloodthirsty and territorial after the nearby villagers began practicing fell and torturous rituals to their evil god, disturbing the natural primal energies of the river and warping the elementals that resided there. Conqueror's Bay and the Horse Lord's Fields. Nisroch. Like much of Avastan's western coast, Nisroch endures an onslaught of frigid rains and the wrathful waves of the Arcadian Ocean crashing upon its breakwaters, especially in the cold autumnal months. Nisroch's steepled citadels stand like indomitable tyrants before an angry mob, its glistening wet stone defiant against the elements. As Nidal's sole port, Nisroch hosts an unusually high number of foreign travelers, offering its citizens more exposure to the outside world than most other Nidalese settlements. As trade flows in, the city's population has burgeoned, nearing 25,000 citizens, including numerous immigrants, and making it even larger by population than the country's capital. Nisroch overflows by reasons of convenience, not of appeal, and it operates under a strict caste system, firmly controlled by its ruling elite. The titles and positions within this hierarchy are passed down through generations, with the most influential families tracing their lineage back to the ancient horse lords. Here, the Umbral court's authority is closely entwined with the Church of Zon Kuthon, and they administer governance based on ancient and severe theological laws. In legal and political disputes, an intricate web of thousands of laws and exceptions come into play. The older and more obscure a law, the more power it carries within the Parliament. Barristers vie for coveted positions as court representatives for noble families, aiming for long-term careers that bring wealth, respect, and secure access to the city's limited social mobility. For common folk, however, the law is absolute, ruthlessly enforced by a fearsome organization called the Silent Shroud. This relentless force operates under the command of the Shrouded One, whose true identity remains a mystery to all but the highest city officials. These violent lawkeepers harvest their agents, called the Silent Enforcers, from the lower classes, who are typically kidnapped as children and then tortured and trained until they obey absolutely. In the final stages of their training, their mouths are also sewn shut, ensuring their silence forever. With its greater foreign exposure, however, there are those in the city who seek to liberate Nidal from the iron grip of the Umbral court's totalitarian rule. They are called the Whispered Song. This clandestine society includes secret Desnan worshippers and their allies. Guided by their leader, Siarna Aldrin, a rogue cleric of Desna, they work in the shadows to secure the welfare of their members. The society operates covertly, providing aid to the impoverished and the ailing by supplying food and medicine. Additionally, they create underground markets for stolen or tax-exempted goods to subvert the oppressive taxation system. Their endeavors include establishing networks of spies to gather crucial information and assisting in the covert movement of agents in and out of the city. Recent developments have further bolstered the Whispered Song's ranks. The group has garnered newfound support from a faction of liberated silent enforcers known as the Unsilenced. Their courageous leader, Axriel Freeman, a man hunted and wanted by the authorities, is a formidable monk. The primary objective of the Unsilenced is to abduct silent enforcers and skillfully remove the indoctrination placed upon them, thereby liberating them from the oppressive mental conditioning. The major city districts are as follows. The Spires, the affluent north side of the city, houses wealthy nobles within towering villas built upon the ruins of their predecessors. Cathedral Summit serves as the district's nucleus, dominated by the infamous Cathedral of Bone, where the High Priestess, the Overdiocesan, resides. The North River bank is home to Nisroch's small but well-trained armada, and the military compounds called the Block. Waterview, east of the Block, consists of wharves and warehouses, owned by the Nisrochi nobility and catering to merchant ships and private vessels under noble patronage. Graveside, located along the east wall, separated from the lower spires by a wide avenue leading out of the Deathgate, this ward includes the incinerators and Nisroch's vast cemetery. The Maw. This jagged coast marks where the Usk River meets the bay, guarded by a series of rocky islets called the Highs. A precariously tall lighthouse of crumbling grey stone stands perched upon the westernmost islet, and 2 military bases stationed on the islands are overseen by the city's enigmatic harbour-master, Glowell, an undead wight. Clifftown, a settlement of fishermen and sea farmers, rests to the north, while to the south the witch markets offer an open-air bazaar for common folk and foreigners alike. Portside, situated on an isle separated from the mainland by the wide channel carved by the River Usk, Portside serves as the foreigners' quarter. Foreign merchants here can rent space for their goods without entering the main city. A community of immigrants, mostly from Cheliax, runs inns, taverns, and supply shops, as well as offers ship repairs. Southbank. Housing the common folk and the working class, Southbank bears the weight of poverty amidst an otherwise immaculate city. 2 dark stone bridges adorned with macabre bone and chain carvings connect Southbank and the spires, their high arches holding iron portcullises to defend against an uprising from the city's lesser citizens. Nightbinder's Wharf. Hidden just downriver of the city of Nisroch, concealed by a strategic arrangement of dark-leaved trees, lies Nightbinder's Wharf, a heavily fortified dock where Nidalese shadow callers and covert operatives embark on foreign ships for clandestine missions. These skilled individuals, some accompanied by powerful and shadowy animal companions, accept commissions from wealthy patrons, influential members of the Umbral court, and foreign dignitaries. Most foreign clients who seek their services are Chelish, often representing House Thrune, or affluent private citizens aiming to gain a unique advantage. While governments like Cheliax might have more friendly arrangements with Nidalese enforcers, the majority of visitors to Nightbinder's Wharf are in fact private individuals or organizations whose home countries would disapprove of their actions if they were known. Albatross. Albatross is a tranquil port town overlooking the serene Conqueror's Bay. This isolated island settlement exudes an eerie peace, where its reserved fisherfolk go about their daily tasks, while a cacophony of squawking gulls fills the air. Albatross, however, serves a dual purpose beyond being a humble fishing village. It also serves as a place of exiles for operatives of the Umbral court who have committed crimes but spared harsher sentencing due to political considerations. One such exile, for example, is Alcava of the Uskwood, a Caligny druid who found herself entangled in a disastrous political clash with Master Eloyander. Alcava roams aimlessly along the cliffs with her white wolf companion Ziak. Secretly, Alcava clings to a cache of incriminating information about Eloyander, and she yearns for an end to her exile and has long pondered the prospect of revealing her secrets, yet fears that such a revelation might expose her to deadly retaliation from her adversary's assassins have kept her from doing so far. Wingless Rock. Barely deserving the title of an island, Wingless Rock emerges only 20 feet above the waterline, and during high tide it diminishes even further. Scattered among the rocks on the southern coast, the ruins of a once grey, salt-battered fishing shack stands as the only remnants of human presence. Despite its desolate appearance, however, Wingless Rock has not remained untouched over the past decade. As we know, the Pathfinder Society is actively engaged in thwarting numerous Aspis Consortium schemes over the years. One such nefarious Aspis plot was known as the Corhome Agenda. At the heart of this operation was Professor Cramalog, a pioneering researcher who had long been associated with the Consortium. To conduct his clandestine study, Cramalog established a hidden underground research facility on Wingless Rock. The details of the investigation into Cramalog and his sinister endeavours unfolds in the Pathfinder Society adventure series titled All for Immortality. The Moonless Mirror. Perched high atop the cliffs, gazing over the expanse of Nisroch Bay, a striking crystal pane stands, its surface slightly domed and spanning an impressive 25 feet in diameter. Behind this radiant structure, darkness churns like a cauldron of boiling pitch. The mirror is effectively a seal for a breach in the shadow plane. A dark Naga named Yisathoy, the oil-tongued, has carved out a dominion on the shadow plane behind the moonless mirror. Orolo's Quay. Centuries ago, Orolo's Quay thrived as a bustling seaport, but with the growth of coastal Varissia, the town fell into a state of decay and abandonment. The once proud Chelish fortress that anchored the settlement now stands in ruins, inhabited mostly by seabirds and smugglers. Leading the current band of smugglers is Brovos Gultung, a cunning and crude Varisian pirate with a reputation for making enemies from Riddleport to Magnamar. Seeking safety, he fled to Nidal, where he pays superficial respect to the Midnight Lord to avoid trouble with the Umbral Council and their agents. His gang, known as the Gulls, oversees a ragtag operation focused on smuggling illicit food, liquor, drugs, and oddities in and out of Nidal. Brovos occasionally smuggles people for a high price and under the right circumstances, but he is cautious not to draw the attention of the Nidalese authorities. However, those with sympathetic stories, particularly runaway slaves and the elderly in need, might find a compassionate side to Brovos, who sees himself as a bit of a people's hero. Edamara's Folly. The Archmage Misandroth Fiendlorn is a well-known figure among Nidalese arcanists. His relentless quest for immortality resulted in a vast repository of knowledge about outsiders, necromantic arts, abjurations, and more. One of his most noteworthy facilities is known today as Edamara's Folly. Edamara, an apprentice of Fiendlorn, maintained this pristine research tower with its steel and glass structure adorned with precise arcane runes. The tower is mirrored in the Shadow Plane. The sinister version of Edamara's tower is crafted from blackened iron and blood-stained obsidian, a far cry from the sterile appearance of the material plane's counterpart. Velstrax of the Interlocutor and Augur breeds inhabit this dark realm, using the laboratories to inflict torment upon unfortunate captives and each other. As one of the unmonitored open rifts, some have considered using Edamara's Folly as a means of plane hopping between the material and shadow planes, but the dangers left behind by Fiendlorn and his apprentice, as well as the challenge of stabilizing the active portals to gain controlled access, deter all but the most daring explorers. Icebow Bridge. The quaint but darkly scenic village of Icebow Bridge is named for the large bridge that connects the northern and southern banks of the Usk through the center of town. The bridge is one of two significant landmarks in the village, the other being the Library Without Light. This library houses a collection of pre-Earthfall texts that fleeing survivors from Aslant and Thassalon brought with them into Nidal. The Library Without Light's diverse contents are written in long-forgotten languages, spanning obscure religious rituals, ancient noble genealogies, shattered pre-Earthfall continents, and even extinct species behaviors. Scholars from Nidal and beyond seek approval from the master librarian Hale Kragex, a formidable figure who controls access to the library. With a vast staff of acolytes and apprentices, Hale ensures the library's wealth of knowledge is carefully curated and protected. Due to the Library Without Light's significance and its ability to draw foreign visitors, the village of Icebow Bridge is considered a desirable location for ambitious Umbral agents and members of the Umbral Court. The village usually hosts at least one full Umbral Court member and several agents, and the quality of lodgings and amenities far surpasses what one might expect from a village of this size. Kayali. This fetchling village has just shy of 200 residents. In Nidal, fetchlings are typically found in small, close-knit families scattered throughout larger cities, but Kayali stands out as a unique concentration of their people. The fetchlings of Kayali are not particularly devoted to the Umbral Court or inclined to impress humans who visit. Despite this, the village rarely faces intense scrutiny or demands for service from the Umbral Court, thanks largely to the efforts of Chancellor Zelvith, a veteran mesmerist. Chancellor Zelvith makes regular trips to Pangolais, the Nidalese capital, to proclaim Kayali's loyalty and secure its political status, ensuring the village's safety from the Kuthites. Few of the villagers are fully aware of the many sacrifices and challenges faced by Chancellor Zelvith as she endures to safeguard the settlement. She prefers to maintain an air of mystery and refrains from sharing the horrors that she has witnessed. In fact, besides her diplomatic endeavors, Zelvith oversees an elite network of anonymous spies stationed across the country, providing valuable intelligence that protects Kayali from potential threats. As the Chancellor nears old age, the village faces the dilemma of finding a worthy successor to carry on her responsibilities and preserve their security. The Omberfell Forest. While it may be smaller than the notorious Uskwood, this ancient forest has a rich history and many secrets of its own. Within its depths dwell the Zoskeric shadow giants, who have now called the Omberfell their home for millennia. These savage warriors coexist alongside forest drakes, darkling fey creatures, and a few small druidic circles as well. Located near the northern edge of the Omberfell is Soth Silir, a striking basalt monolith that stands tall, serving as the focal point of worship for the Zoskeric clan of shadow giants. This magnificent structure reaches nearly 30 feet in height and casts enigmatic skewed shadows across the creek that lies beside it. The shadow giants make their homes within the embrace of the surrounding woods, fashioning large dens amidst the underbrush of the Umberfell's majestic hemlocks and tulip trees. Guided by their priest Salifeth, the giants diligently patrol the Atteran Ranches under the moonlit veil of night. They serve as boogeymen, striking fear into the hearts of the children of northern Nidal, and also keeping agitators across the Varisian border at bay. While they typically prefer to traverse the lands alone, blending into the shadow and remaining unnoticed, when they do collectively assemble for war, there are few forces in Avestan that can match them. Not far from Soth Salir is a colossal smithy constructed from rugged, massive basalt blocks known as the Viridian Forge. Within its confines, this forge burns with lightless flames from the shadow plane, its eerie glow reflected by eldritch runes adorning 2 gigantic anvils and equally massive quenching barrels. This remarkable place serves as the domain of Ukorviak, a shadow giant with unparalleled skills in the crafting of extraordinary weapons made from green-hued living steel. Within the Umberfell, a unique grove yields this exceptional material, bearing a distinct viridian sheen and possessing the ability to regenerate and repair itself when damaged. Among the Zoskeric tribe, Ukorviak alone commands the closely guarded secrets of harvesting and working with living steel. These secrets are the source of the considerable wealth of the Shadow Giants, and contribute significantly to Ukorviak's esteemed position among his kind. The Shadow Giants are not the only residents of the Umberfell. In the heart of the Umberfell can be found the Fields of Pain's Forgetting. In this secretive enclave, an array of luminous mushrooms, white poppies, and other intoxicating and hallucinogenic plants thrive. Each plant cultivated in these fields possesses addictive properties and has the remarkable ability to numb or erase pain. This is not a coincidence, rather it is a deliberate design by those who oversee this operation. At the helm of this complex and secretive operation stands Mistress Cultivator Preali Dat, a skillful fetchling alchemist and druid. As the overseer of the Fields of Pain's Forgetting, she not only manages the cultivation and distribution of alchemicals, but also handles the Umbral Court's more specific requests. Despite her expertise, the mistress's indifference to court politics has hindered her ascent within the ranks of the Umbral Court. The Atteran Ranches. Whitemound. Nestled at the base of the imposing Mindspin Mountains, where the Atteran Ranches yield to the expansive Uthori Steppes, lies the unassuming town of Whitemound. This serene settlement serves as the social and economic hub of Nidal's northern plains. During the summer months, the population swells with the arrival of ranchers, who come to trade and celebrate marriage ceremonies, adorning the town with their vibrant braid-decked tents. Despite the restrained and fearful nature of festivities in Nidal, these events are some of the closest things to lively gatherings that the oppressed inhabitants experience. Whitemound holds a sacred history from the time before Earthfall, when it was deemed an ideal location for a communal granary, safeguarded against the periodic flooding of the Usk River. Initially a modest hamlet, this town grew steadily around this essential facility. Today, Whitemound's bustling livestock markets play crucial roles in Nidal's food supply, while the master tanners work diligently to meet the demands for leather from the Kuthites. Functioning as a self-governing community like most of Nidal's smaller settlements, Whitemound is not exempt from scrutiny. Its proximity to the Uthori Pass, a trailhead leading to Korvosa through the Mindspin Mountains, attracts the watchful gaze of the Umbral Court. Currently assigned to oversight duty here is Insevier of Nisroch, a human investigator who has fallen into disgrace after repeated failures in his previous assignments. Isolated and shunned by the villagers, Insevier maintains his watch from the town's Kuthite cathedral. Beyond the walls of the Whitemound, the vast grey-grassed plains north of the Uskwood and southwest of the Barrymore are home to the skilled horse breeders, ranchers, and trainers of the Atteran Ranches. This region holds a significant heritage, as the people here are descendants of the pre-Earthfall horse lords who once ruled Nidal. They carry on their ancestors' traditions, including a specialized form of spear combat and ancient funerary rites. Within these lands, the breeders raise the dark Nidamars, renowned for their swiftness, silence, and unwavering discipline in the face of danger, and the smaller, quicker, foam-pale Chadamars, which have often been compared to moon shadows racing across the grass. However, rumors have spread among the Nidalese in the cities, suggesting that the ranchers might be harboring Desnan dissidents attempting to infiltrate Nidal. These rumors are in fact true. Hidden among the ranchers are Dai Iteran, a cleric of Desna herself, and Odorak Blackraven, an inspirational bard. Yet they take great care to conceal their true allegiance from those around them. Dai's father, Vaid Atteran, is also the amiable patriarch of the Atteran clan, who attempts to divert suspicion from his daughter by orchestrating loud and clumsy hunts for non-existent agitators. However, Vaid knows that this ruse can't last forever. The day will come when someone stumbles upon the truth. No secret remains hidden from the watchful eyes of the Umbral court for long, and should this secret be exposed, it could spell disaster for the entire region and its residents. The Uthori Steppes. At the northwestern expanse of the Atteran Ranches domain, nestled near the foothills of the Mindspin Mountains, lie the Uthori Steppes. This is a wild region, sparsely inhabited. Spotted grey cats stealthily prowl through the grasslands, while hawks gracefully soar in the skies above. Ever vigilant, the ranchers here keep watchful eyes out for any poachers or thieves who dare to trespass. Atteran Uthori, the embittered patriarch of the Uthori clan and a fierce rival of Vaid Atterans, has for the last few years been working on acquiring some of the genie-touched horses owned by the Al-Zabriti tribes in Qadira. Convinced that acquiring an Al-Zabriti breeding stallion would elevate his clan's fortunes above those of the Atterans, Atteran is willing to pay almost any price, or even sponsor foreign horse thieves to acquire such a horse. However, his legitimate efforts have thus far been stymied, and no credible thieves have yet presented themselves. The Plains of Night. In the desolate plains of Nidal, an unlikely group of Desnans, known as the Dream Tenders, have been drawn together by their shared devotion to the Whispered Song. Although Nidal is a perilous land for followers of Desna, the Dream Tenders have committed themselves to defending the night and championing the virtuous in the face of Zon Kuthon's oppressive domain. The Dream Tenders' headquarters, the Plains of the Night, operates as a horse ranch, and some distance from civilization. This remote location allows them to bring in new guests discreetly, and raise horses that fund their activities while providing a legitimate facade. The Dream Tenders maintain amicable relations with local communities, but they remain cautious, knowing that Nidalese authorities can turn against outsiders at any time. Recognizing the futility of direct rebellion against Nidal's shadowy rulers, the Dream Tenders employ a different approach. They focus their efforts on the night and dreams, wielding rituals and mystical methods to aid the oppressed people of Nidal and counteract the torment inflicted upon them. Welcoming Nidalese refugees who seek solace from their cruel masters, the Dream Tenders offer sanctuary, counseling, and magical support to help victims overcome their trauma. Led by Atrixia the Star-Touched, a Nidalese Aasimar whose markers of celestial blood drew the ire of the Umbral agents, the Dream Tenders consist of mediums, mesmerists, psychics, and spiritualists. Their secondary mission, kept secret from all but the most trusted members, involves searching for a sacred relic known as the Harp of Night's Hope. The Dream Tenders must tread carefully as they seek this elusive artifact, especially now with the rumors that Mistress Veraine of the Umbral court also pursues this same relic. The Barrowmoor. This area is dotted with enormous burial mounds left behind by Nidal's original horse lords. Those who venture into the region find themselves disoriented, unable to escape the looping paths that lead them around the same hillocks repeatedly. The Atteran Ranchers, descendants of the horse lords, hold the Barrowmoor in quiet reverence, but seldom venture into its unsettling depths. These burial mounds are the final resting places of one of the oldest surviving cultures in the Inner Sea region, dating back to the time of ancient Asland. Within these tombs lie valuable historical artifacts and relics, providing insight into the horse lords' lives and religious practices before the oppressive reign of Zon Kuthon. Despite the potential riches and knowledge concealed within the Barrowmoor's depths, the mounds are not easy to plunder. The ancient horse lords foresaw the possibility of grave robbers and constructed their tombs with clever defenses, including traps, haunts, and malevolent spirits bound to false doors. The newest mounds retain these formidable protections, ensuring that few outsiders can access the treasures and secrets within. While no formal structure governs those who wander the Barrowmoor, an aged man named Ridwan Goish serves as the unofficial lead caretaker. Having lived in the region for decades, Goish commands the area's undead energies and safeguards the tombs against intruders. He holds extensive knowledge of the burial grounds, and though elusive, may offer counsel to those who approach Barrowmoor with respect and humility. Some of the most significant burial sites in the mounds includes the cairn of Attai Horsespeaker, a legendary Atteran chieftain who ruled much of these lands over 10,000 years ago, as well as the mounds of the Bennett clan. The now extinct Bennett clan were a tribe of demon-worshipping raiders who once terrorized the region long before the Earthfall cataclysm, and it has been long whispered by other tribes that many of these bloodthirsty brutes rose after death to unlife and continue to require sacrifices in their new haunts. Raven's Cry Altar. This weathered basalt sculpture, an ancient relic, portrays a majestic raven with its wings gracefully outspread, perched above a sacrificial altar. This monument bears the remnants of a long-lost splinter tribe from the Atteran Ranches, a group that defied the teachings of Zon Kuthon and met a tragic fate centuries ago. The tribe's name and existence have been swallowed by time, leaving only this altar behind as a silent testimony to their history. Over the centuries, the altar has been abandoned and forgotten, standing amidst the windswept grey grass. However, recently, Adanos Blackraven, patriarch of the Blackraven tribe, has felt an inexorable pull towards the ancient site. Concerned for his son, Odorak, whom we discussed earlier, Adanos would seek solace in the long rides across the Atteran grasslands. During one such ride, he encountered an unusually large raven perched upon the altar. To his astonishment, the raven spoke to him, offering aid to protect his son and elevate his tribe to greatness. He suspects that the raven will soon urge him to revive the heretical beliefs once followed by the altar's creators, and he is bracing for himself to make that fateful decision. Carpad. The Vale of Carpad lies almost 100 miles north of Pangolais, where the towering trees of the Uskwood begin to thin, slowly fading into rolling hills and fertile cropland. Wooden houses with thatched roofs rise from the valley floor, following the curve of the stream that carved Carpad into the hillside when the world was young. The quiet town that shares the valley's name is an ancient settlement, dating back well into the Age of Anguish. From the manor on the slopes of the Vale, the House of Boroi has ruled Carpad for centuries. The people of Carpad are practical, dour, self-sufficient and poor, but possessed of a stubborn pride. They are also insular and suspicious of outsiders. They worship Zonkuthon, but theirs is the quiet piety of tradition, not the burning devotion of fanatics. Each week at the temple, the townsfolk cut or pierce themselves to offer a measure of blood and pain to their god, but few bring a knife near their hands. A farmer must be able to hold his tools, after all. In this way, Carpad is not unlike many other rural Nidalese villages. However, one notable reason Carpad stands out is that the virulent disease known as tallow throat originated in Carpad. This curious disease's symptoms include waxy skin, a swollen throat, and the outbreak of painful rashes. It is apparently connected to the plane of shadow, and fetchlings are known to be immune to it, though they might act as carriers. If left untreated for several days, a fatal, gruesome explosion of the swollen neck goiter releases shadow creatures in the disease's final stage. Carpad was also the principal setting for the standalone Pathfinder module titled The Midnight Mirror. Rivercroft. This small fishing town, with approximately 300 residents, sits at the confluence of the Usk and Gurn rivers. The village maintains 2 toll bridges over these shallow waterways, contributing to its relative prosperity within provincial Nidal. The current Umbral agent stationed at Rivercroft is Bellador Chaintongue, a Caligny magus whose attention in recent years has been captured by a remarkable discovery made by a local trader. A polished oblong of shadow glass, within which lies the preserved corpse of a shadow giant, adorned in ceremonial regalia of a style long forgotten over the last 3 centuries. Clasped tightly in the giant's lifeless arms is a locked casket made of rune-inscribed obsidian, spacious enough to fit a human coffin. The giant's arms are bound with spiked chains, and the dried blood on his wrists hints at deliberate acts of self-infliction with 2 curved blades attached to the chains. The casket's runes, obscured by the giant's arms and dried blood, seem ancient. Although Bellador is unaware of the casket's contents, or why the deceased shadow giant guards it so fiercely, he firmly believes that solving this enigma, and if necessary unveiling its secrets, will elevate his status and might even grant him the opportunity to join the Umbral court himself, a long-cherished ambition. Discreetly, Bellador seeks assistance from adventurers and scholars in neighbouring Nirmathas to help him unravel the secrets of this find. The Mindspin Foothills. Ash Hollow. Nestled in the northeastern foothills of the Mindspin Mountains lies a small mining village that serves as a vital supplier of coal to Nidal's lightless capital and plays a significant role in trade with the dwarves of the Glimmerhold. However, its most notorious reputation comes from the nearby mountain, Agarthal, and the chilling observance of the Festival of Night's Return. The Festival of Night's Return, an annual event held on the autumnal equinox, is widely celebrated throughout Nidal with burning effigies and self-punishing processions. In Agarthal, the festival takes on a more sinister turn. Thousands of devotees make the pilgrimage to Ash Hollow and gather in the valley on the surrounding hillsides to witness the Black Rose. This immense iron crucible, comprising 10 overlapping panels, rests in a cave mouth on the mountain's sheltered side. Throughout the festival, the Black Rose is heated with a towering bonfire, and sacrifices are offered to it from dusk till dawn. Having been used in this manner for countless generations, the Black Rose of Agarthal has long awakened as a living idol. It is tended and nourished by the Watchers on the hill, a secretive cult residing in a ruined keep atop the mountain. Their leader, the mysterious Bagaloth, is mentioned by name in the oldest chronicles of the ceremony, but whether the records refer to the same individual or a succession of leaders with the same name remains unknown. Locals believe that Bageloth and his followers are ageless, destined to live until the Black Rose is destroyed. Though many within Nidal privately consider the ascetic cultists as eccentric or even heretical, the continued operation of the Crucible for so many years suggests the tacit approval of the Midnight Lord. Usk Lake. Tranquil and softly radiant, Usk Lake is often compared to a sea of shimmering starlight. This is not merely a poetic notion, as the lake indeed emits a gentle glow that illuminates Nidal's perpetual darkness. On some nights the water sparkles with reflections of stars that remain unseen in the sky, while on others it fails to mirror the scant celestial bodies that manage to pierce Nidal's unnaturally thick clouds. Legend holds that the surface of Usk Lake does not mirror the earthly heavens, but instead provides glimpses of the distorted space between stars and the enigmatic realms where Zon Kuthon transformed into the Prince of Pain. At the western fringes of the Usk Lake, where its waters flow into the Usk River, lies a mysteriously deep basin, with an unusual chill that causes the surrounding vegetation to wither in frost. Hidden beneath the waves here lies a frozen realm ruled by Cailleach, an Arctic sea hag who was banished from her northern homeland. Cailleach's exile occurred after a violent confrontation with her sisters, triggered by a dispute over a stolen child. Wounded and desperate, she fled southward, enduring the hostility of locals until she eventually found refuge in the waters of the lake. Here she managed to freeze her hovel to a more tolerable temperature, asserting her dominance over the lake's lesser inhabitants, including merrows and scrags. Embracing her newfound role as the Queen of the Lake, Cailleach now seeks to maintain her privileged position. Ash Peak. This dormant volcano was the home of a clan of fire giants, and they dwelled there in relative isolation for centuries. Sometime in the last decade, however, the fire giants at Ash Peak helped the storm giant tyrant Volstis storm a flying castle belonging to the cloud giants known as Zephyr Hall. After unleashing a volley of conjured meteors upon the castle, forcing the cloud giants to set down in Ash Peak's caldera for repairs, Volstis's forces quickly overran the castle, slaughtering the cloud giant defenders. The eventual conclusion of the tyrant Volstis's bid for control of the region's giants is played out in the Giant Slayer adventure path. The fire giant King Tatarian and his queen Quivixia ruled in Ash Peak. Tatarian was the eldest son and heir of the previous king of Clan Brandrick of the fire giants. After succeeding his father, Tatarian married the cleric Quivixia, and together they had 2 sons and 2 daughters, including the giant half-fiend Hirakin. The Seven Fangs Bastion. In the aftermath of the Earthfall Cataclysm, a powerful Vrock demon known as Seven Fangs was brought to Galarian. When orcs reached the surface during the Age of Darkness, Seven Fangs established himself as the brutal leader of an orc tribe, and they established a fort in a secluded valley in the Mindspins. With the Vrock's magic backing them, the orcs dominated the Kellid tribes of ancient Nirmathas and Malthun for generations. In a significant battle lost to history, however, the Kellids managed to defeat the orcs, and bound Seven Fangs to the very foundation stones of her castle. Since that time, humans on both sides of the Mindspin Mountains, Nidalese and Malthuni alike, have believed the valley to be cursed, and cold mists continually shroud the ground regardless of the season. Despite the passage of thousands of years, the bastion itself has remained remarkably intact, but few have dared to explore it fully. Most consider the old ruins to be indefensible and strategically insignificant. Nevertheless, rumors persist of haunting nightmares that afflict anyone brave enough to spend a night under its roof, visions filled with gleefully unspeakable acts that torment the minds of those who dare to sleep there. The Brimstone Springs. The village of Brimstone Springs lies on the western wall of the Mindspins, near the headwaters of the Sulphur River. Brimstone Springs has but one claim to fame, the infamous Soulsheen Baths, a collection of natural cascades and hot springs that reek because of the water's high concentration of sulphur and other minerals. The true master of the springs is a drowning devil named Raynox, who has thus far kept his ultimate plans for the baths unknown to all but his master, the infernal Duke Crokel, who rules over the Palace of Delusions in Stygia. The predominance of hellspawn tieflings among the offspring of those who bathe in the springs is alarming, and it's only a matter of time before someone starts investigating the location more thoroughly. Gorval's Crossing. A lesser-known pass in the valley, carved by the swift waters of the Sulphur River, leads through the treacherous Mindspin Mountains and into Malthun. This pass, known as Gorval's Crossing, is protected by the speakers of the Eretai, a charnel colossus that formed shortly after Earthfall, when the last members of the Eretai tribe realized that survival in the harsh new world was impossible. Rather than surrender to the Nidalese, their longtime enemies, who had embraced the dark rule of Zon Kuthon, the Eretai chose death as a preferable fate. In death, however, the spirits of the elder shamans of the Eretai refused to give up their tribe's traditions and memories. and so unfortunately their minds and bodies were bound together, creating a grotesque amalgam of limbs and spirits. The result was a terrifying perversion of undeath that still stalks their ancestral lands to this day. Snowford. Nestled on the slopes of the Mindspin Mountains, close to the Malthuni border, lies the quaint village of Snowford. Renowned for its delectable sweet white goat cheeses and the invigorating Snow Serpent's Kiss, a minty liqueur infused with mountain herbs and wildflowers, the village is home to just under 200 residents. Roughly 5 miles outside the village, a glade with a circle of obsidian foundation stones emerges during midnight on the winter solstice. The shrine is attributed with miraculous powers, such as the curing of lycanthropy, the healing of ailing children, and restoring sanity to those traumatized by horrors. Despite these marvels, the exact location of the Glassmoon Witch's glade remains a closely guarded secret among the villagers of Snowford. The village's clever mayor, Wistia Glasswing, a half-elf bard, is adept at redirecting outsiders away from the glade. To strangers, all locals know well to disavow knowledge of the shrine. The Umbral Basin. Ridwan. Nidal's great fortress city stands defiant under a sky tainted by smoke and dust from the fissure-filled weeping fields, engulfing it in unending gloom. The clouds above the city emit an eerie violet hue due to the immense rift situated at Ridwan's heart. Initially, Ridwan began as an unholy shrine, centered around the Shadowflame Rift. Over time, it evolved into a fortified tower, and eventually transformed into its present state, a stern fortress crafted from rough black stone with glimmering crystals that reflect the rift's flames, creating countless tiny mirrors. Today, the Shadowflame Cathedral serves as a significant religious site in the Kuthite faith. Together with the Midnight Citadel, the city acts as a training ground, forging fanatical warriors capable of crushing Zon-Kuthon's enemies both within Nidal and beyond. Significant points of interest in the city of Ridwan include Crucible Hall. The orphaned and foundling children sent to Ridwan for their training find themselves housed in Crucible Hall, a Spartan and charmless dormitory. Within its walls, these young ones devote nearly every waking moment to honing their bodies for combat and immersing their minds in the cruel mysteries of Zon-Kuthon's faith. Cut off from influences that might cause doubt, they spend over a decade in Crucible Hall, emerging as fervent fanatics by the time they face the Weeper's ordeal in the nearby Weeping Fields. The Midnight Citadel. The Midnight Citadel stands as a forbidding edifice constructed from rough black and grey stone, crowned with immense steel spikes. Here Zon-Kuthon's armies are molded through pain and suffering, preparing to crush heresy, eliminate threats to Nidal, and confront immortal adversaries. The Midnight General Kavisier oversees the fortress, with duties divided among martial training, magical auxiliaries, and preserving the histories and holy texts of the Weeping Fields. Shadowflame Cathedral. Erected around the Shadowflame Rift where Zon-Kuthon made his pact with the Black Triune, the Shadowflame Cathedral stands as one of the most sacred sites of the evil faith. The architectural marvel, blending various influences, reflects the fissures of tainted fire erupting through the cathedral, culminating in the vast rift itself. Hierarch Itherine of the Shadowflame, the cathedral's powerful overseer, has helped grow the cathedral's notorious reputation. The cathedral also houses the Voyages into the Void, the best accounting of the dark tapestry to be found in Galarian. Spikeforge. Situated beneath the Midnight Citadel, the Spikeforge transforms discarded Velstrak chains into vicious weapons for Ridwan's army. Named by the Velstraks whose chains they carry, these weapons are highly valued for their effectiveness in battle. The Soulbooks Library. Hidden beneath the Midnight Citadel, the Soulbooks holds the records of all births and deaths in Nidal, meticulously maintained by Zon-Kuthon's faithful. Each village and town submits its own records, to avoid the wrath of the Umbral Court. While the importance of these records to the Black Triune remains unclear, local superstition suggests that the Soulbooks hold the souls of Nidalese in bondage, possibly playing a role in the Velstrak's enigmatic rituals that wrest souls away from Pharasma's judgment, for the propagation of their own species. Other important locations in the regions include the Irrigath Monastery. This ancient monastery consists of numerous interconnected chambers hewn into the mountainside. The outer chambers are characterized by minimalist simplicity, intended to foster stoicism and encourage profound contemplations of life's suffering. The flowing water, channeled through the mountain snowmelt, courses through the monastery's interior, culminating in breathtaking kinetic sculptures that meld light, steel, and water into mesmerizing displays. Throughout the year, Kuthite pilgrims flock to Irrigath Monastery, but are generally restricted from venturing beyond its outer chambers. Only those truly seeking to test their endurance and fearlessness are permitted to petition Mistress Merinda the Striped, an esteemed leader and scarred monk of great power, for entry into the inner chambers. As the stories go, Mistress Merinda possesses an uncanny ability to peer into a petitioner's eyes and instantly discern their devotion to Zon-Kuthon and any potential heresies. Whispers abound about the perils that await within the inner sanctums. Tales speak of rooms devoid of air, plunged into pitch-black darkness, or inundated with lethal gases and substances. Some chambers allegedly have floors covered in lattices of spiked chains suspended over gaping abysses. The exact reward for those who brave such treacherous hazards remains a closely guarded secret, for those who emerge triumphant from the trials are sworn to silence. Nevertheless, those who bear the spiked chain Irrigath brand are living testaments to their extraordinary feats of fierceness and fortitude. Such awe-inspiring achievements continue to draw aspirants from across Nidal. Hesperix Manor, located northeast of Ridwan on the edge of the desolate Umbral Basin, stands a solitary grey manor. Built in the classic Chelish style from a bygone era, tragedy struck the Hesperix family during the tumultuous Chelish Civil War, resulting in the loss of their home and lives. The ownership reverted to the Umbral court, who had little interest in this remote manor, leaving it neglected for many years. However, 30 years ago, an Umbral agent named Uskwood of Pangolais, a half-elf wizard of considerable power, seized the opportunity to acquire the manor for herself, and it has been her abode ever since. Uskwood is a strong advocate of the Belvay doctrine, a perspective that not everyone in the Umbral court shares, particularly certain high-ranking undead members. In the 3 decades since her retirement, Uskwood has channeled her energy into researching and sharing strategies and weapons to combat the undead. Disguised under a false name, she regularly publishes treatises on the subject and discreetly circulates them through intermediaries. To her surprise, this has led her to establish an unlikely correspondence with Pharasmans and Sarenites in other lands who share her interests and dedications. While the Umbral court is well aware of Uskwood's activities, they have chosen to turn a blind eye, as she technically doesn't violate Nidalese law. Besides, she remains loyal to the cause and possesses considerable power, making any form of direct reprimanding too troublesome to be worth pursuing. The Undervale. Travelling through the dreaded Umbral Basin is a feat few souls willingly undertake. Yet there are brave individuals who dare to traverse this shadow-racked region. Among them are the semi-regular merchant caravans journeying between Malthun and Ridwan, driven by economic necessity and protected by elite mercenary guards. But in the shadows, a less well-known group operates, the Halflings of the Bellflower Network. Using the darkened mists of the nearby pass through the Menador Mountains, they aid freed slaves from Nidal and Cheliax, guiding them to Malthun and beyond, sending them on to more welcoming nations in the Inner Sea. Undervale is a settlement of these crafty halflings, who capitalize on the Basin's infamous perils to conceal their true activities. The illusions and deceptions crafted by Undervale's residents keep outsiders at bay. Undervale is an extraordinary sight, an out-of-place haven nestled amid the roiling shadows of the Basin. Within its concealed walls, visitors are greeted by a bright, lively community. Halflings make up the majority of the residents, with a few gnomes living among them, intrigued by the thrill of living amidst legendary dangers. Despite the grim surroundings, fires warm every hearth, songs fill the air, and the smell of delicious meals permeates the settlement. Managed by the capable Landry Tetherteen, Undervale maintains its defense systems, including golems and illusions, to safeguard its residents and the Bellflower Network's operations. The halfling-sized accommodations may be a challenge for taller visitors, like the occasional Malthuni caravan mercenaries who mysteriously gets lost in the mists for a few days while aiding Undervale. Although Undervale's experts have carved a safe haven amidst hostile environs, the journey from Cheliax and Nidal to Malthun via this route remains perilous and treacherous. The passage through the Menador Mountains is difficult and far from civilization. While authorities from Nidal and Cheliax may not pursue fleeing slaves into the Basin, the threat of Hell Knights patrolling the southern end of the pass is still very real. Undervale's hunters do their best to clear the route of dangers, but the perils of the Umbral Basin are not easily deterred. Storm Hollow. Storm Hollow is a haunted ruin of a settlement that fell victim to the nightmarish forces of the Umbral Basin. Originally known as Laura's Hollow, this makeshift village attracted refugees, apostates, and those seeking to escape the hardships of life in Cheliax and Nidal. Despite their meagre existence and the perpetual dangers that surround them, the villagers clung to a determinedly cheerful demeanor. However, everything changed when a malevolent shadow storm engulfed the hollow. Velstrax, taking advantage of the storm's reality-warping chaos, emerged from the rift tore in reality. They wreaked havoc upon the townspeople, inflicting horrifying transformations upon their helpless victims. Though the Velstraks eventually departed, the aftermath of their visitation left the village in ruins. Today, Storm Hollow streets are haunted by gasping shadows, mere husks of their former selves. These eerie figures, resembling gruesomely dressed greater shadows, repeat fragmented echoes in their old voices, whisperings of past regrets. Some of them are gruesomely pinned to the walls of their former homes, affixed by their skin robes, which are held in place by rough iron spikes driven through their wrists and eye sockets. These unfortunate souls seem oddly alive and aware of their tragic plight. God's Blood Crevasse. Located southeast of Ridwan, amidst the hissing wastelands of the Weeping Fields, lies a deep and winding fissure known as God's Blood Crevasse. The crevasse holds a remarkable deposit of precious gems called the Pigeon's Blood Rubies, which the Nidalese have been mining for centuries. Some believe that these rubies are not mere natural stones, but a divine gift bestowed by Zon-Kuthon upon his people. They are highly prized, and considered a mark of both high taste and divine favour in Nidalese fashion. Grenda of Elith-Lorin, a former member of the Midnight Guard, who transformed into a Grave Knight upon ascending to the Umbral court, oversees the macabre labour force that work the mines here. The skeletons used in the mines are mostly volunteers, who opted to sell their remains for posthumous labour, used in Nidal in environments where conditions make it challenging for living labourers. However, here even these unliving labourers succumb to the caustic fogs after a few years or months, necessitating the need for a fresh, regular supply of corpses to keep the mines going. When the availability of volunteering corpses dwindle, the overseers of the mine resort to more unscrupulous means to secure new skeletons for their grueling work. The Hall of Broken Dreams. Situated in the southern region of Nidal, this grand structure appears to be crafted from pure shadow stuff. It is the dwelling place of a peculiar sect of malevolent beings whose loyalties and schemes have taken an unexpected turn. Comprised of Lampadari Velstraks and fervent mortals, this cult reveres Vevelor, a Velstrak demagogue known as the Broken Dream. Skriel Siken, the leader of this sect, claims to be the herald of Vevelor on Galarian, although her true intentions and her plans for the cult's Velstraks remain shrouded in mystery. The Umbral court is well aware of the existence of the Hall, and annually a group from the Hall ventures to Pangolais to immerse themselves in the urban atmosphere, bask in the prevailing suffering of the city, and discreetly spread their unique faith to any who are willing to listen. They openly discuss the tale of the Broken Dream's transformation into a Velstrak, and then into a demagogue, while skillfully arguing against fatalism or predestination. During their visits to the Nidalese capital, the cultists also engage in covert recruitment efforts. They search for disillusioned Kuthites or hidden atheists who desire to transcend their current state of existence and attain power beyond the confines imposed by the state. At present, the sect comprises around a few dozen non-Velstrak adherents, each willing to undergo gruesome rituals and experiments at the Hall. Their goal is to emulate Vevelor's journey of the flesh and soul, with most aspiring to transform themselves into a Velstrak.